Call this meeting of the Ways and Means Committee to order at 10:05 and introduce and request Representative Janikian introduce House Bill 1194.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I submitted this bill on the request of the Insurance Department. So I will give you a quick synopsis, and then if you want to ask me questions, I may not be able to answer most of them, but the people following me will be able to answer those questions. Anyways, following up from the budget passed last season, the New Hampshire Insurance Department did approach me to sponsor the bill on their behalf, HB 1194, which you have in front of you, to bring more stability and predictability to the department when estimating the insurance premium tax. Namely, okay, wait a minute. HB to bring more stability and predictability to the department when estimating insurance premium tax, revenue projections for the state, especially when a catastrophic event happens, namely a carrier becoming insolvent. This has the potential to decrease state insurance premium tax revenues. The department will get into more detail, as I mentioned, to briefly lay out the purpose of this bill. It's to clarify that credits not filed timely are waived, but will still allow carriers to amend tax returns up to 3 years after they're filed. It limits the amount of credit based on the total assessment. This will reduce the percentage of the permitted credit when the total amount of assessments exceeds a certain threshold. The benefit of this charge is to minimize administrative burden, and insurers can self-calculate their credit without needing the NHID or tax department involvement. The main goal of this legislation is to provide predictability to the legislature to stabilize revenues received from this assessment. This comes into play when there's a catastrophic loss to carriers of $10 million or more. So that's one of the things you'll see in the bill is $10 million cap there, and then reducing the amount of the credit that can be taken. Because absent a hard cap, the IPT revenue is still exposed in the event of a catastrophic assessment, and that would be an insurer going out of business. So if you have any questions for me, as I said, I don't know that I'll be able to answer them, but the people following me should be able to.
For the committee, there was a handout. Everyone got that, which explains more. I've got two more cards. I'll take the opposing view to this bill if there are no questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. Okay, Henry Velo.
I just said to Jen, I don't know if it's gonna make sense if we don't go first.
Well, I would.
Yeah.
Sort of give the one-on-one on what we're talking about here. Yeah. I think they could do a very good.
That's perfectly fine with me. I was going to have you come up and give the negative so he can give the positive. And this is John's.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Old committee from my legislative days. Nice to see you all. For the record, DJ Betancourt. I have the pleasure of serving as the Commissioner of the New Hampshire Insurance Department. I'm joined this morning by Amy Duhame, who is our tax unit director. So I'm going to try to do this better than I attempted to do this presentation the last time. The first time I tried to do this presentation was at the Budget Committee of Conference last year, and you'll see how all of this comes together, and I think I thoroughly confused a good number of people. So I've got it written down this time, and I'm going to try to go through this very methodically, but to the extent that I'm not clear, Amy will help me out. So So why are we here and why have we asked for House Bill 1194 to be introduced? Here's the big picture issue. While insurance solvencies are rare, when they happen, the costs are sudden, they are very real, and they are unavoidable. New Hampshire, like every other state in the country, has a built-in safety net to protect consumers when insurers fail. That safety network, by the way we finance it, can create unexpected swings in state revenue. 1194 does not change that safety net. What it seeks to do is simply smooth out the cost of that safety net as it flows and impacts the state budget so that we don't hit sharp, unpredictable revenue losses in insolvency years for carriers, but it's also not making your lives more difficult when you're trying to put a state budget together, particularly in years where revenues are not as healthy and robust. So I'm going to take this step by step. So step one, what happens when an insurer goes bankrupt or insolvent? When a life or health insurer becomes insolvent, the good news is policyholders don't just lose coverage. They don't just walk away with nothing. Now, they do not get the full benefit of their coverage, but at least there is some coverage for them. And it is why, by the way, the department spends so much time and energy monitoring the financial health and solvency of the company so that we never have to confront this. And to their credit, we as a state have not had a domestic insurer go insolvent since the mid-90s. But that does not mean that we don't see insolvencies in other states with carriers that are domiciled in other states that impact New Hampshire as well, and I'll get to that. So despite the fact that the insurer is insolvent or goes bankrupt, there are claims that still have to be paid, and there's a formula at which they'll be paid out. And policies can sometimes and often have to be continued or transferred to other companies. That protection doesn't come from the state general fund directly. Rather, how that money to pay out those claims or to transfer those policies, it comes from the insurance industry itself through a statutory backdrop called the Guarantee Association. So step two, what is the Guarantee Association? Each state is to have one, so New Hampshire's life and health insurers are required by law to belong to the New Hampshire Life and Health Insurance Guarantee Association. Again, in plain terms, it is an industry-funded safety net. It steps in when a member insurer fails, it pays covered claims, it protects policyholders, it prevents panic, disruption, and consumer harm to the greatest extent possible. This structure keeps taxpayers off the hook for insurer failures while maintaining trust in the insurance market. So how is that fund funded? How is the Guarantee Association fund funded? When there is an insolvency, the Guarantee Association assesses its member insurers. Each insurer pays its share based on market participation. Those assessments can be very large and very sudden depending on the size of the failure. Insurers are legally required to pay these assessments. So what are assessment credits? To avoid double charging insurers, once through assessments and again through premium taxes, New Hampshire law allows insurers to offset part of those assessments against their insurance premium tax liability. This offset is called an assessment credit. Under current law, credits are typically taken over several years. Unused credits can be carried forward. In large insolvency years, credits can stack up quickly. This is reasonable in principle, but problematic in practice. So where does the problem arise? Well, as I mentioned before, it arose during the Committee of Conference for the budget last year. We were asked to come in to present on where things stood with the insurance premium tax credit, the insurance premium tax, excuse me. And we had this very large question mark hanging out there that we could not fully account for because of the way the arrangement which I've just described is currently set up. Now, fortunately, we were coming to the Committee of Conference with a significantly revised upward revenue estimate. Reason being is we made assumptions about the current hard market for some insurance lines that thankfully proved not to be true. Yes, there were some premium increases, and again, not specific to New Hampshire, but really applied across the country. But fortunately, people were not dropping coverages, which again would negatively impact the insurance premium tax revenue intake. So good news for the consumer in the sense that they were maintaining their current level of coverages. Good for all of you that we didn't see the IPT drop. But we still had this question mark, this problem that we had to confront, and we did not have certainty as to how it was going to play out and what to expect. So here are the key issues that we're looking to address. Again, insolvencies are unpredictable. The assessments can be very large. Assessment credits can dramatically reduce premium tax collections in a short period of time, which means, as I've said, general fund revenue can drop suddenly. Budget assumptions can be blown up after the fact. The volatility has nothing to do with economic conditions or policy choices. It is purely a matter of timing. So what we're seeking to do is to smooth out that volatility, to keep the Guarantee Association fully intact, to keep insurers responsible for insolvency costs, preserve the assessment credits, but moderate how quickly and how much those credits hit state revenue in extreme years. So I'm going to stop here, and I'll turn it over to Amy. But again, the real challenge, and the thing that kept me up at night when I was putting my presentation together for the Committee of Conference on the budget, was we were dealing with one of these very significant insurer insolvencies. It was a North Carolina domestic. So it's a North Carolina domestic, but ironically enough, the name of the company was Colorado Bankers Life. If you're following all of that. As it turns out, the CEO of this very, very, very large insurance company was a crook. He's sitting in federal prison, stole millions and millions and millions of dollars and pilfered it right out of this insurance company. And it went insolvent. And this was a very large company. Again, it was a North Carolina domestic, so we didn't have first insight into it. They did. But the timing of it could not have been worse in the sense that all of this was going on, this insolvency process with Colorado Bankers Life, as you all are trying to put a state budget together. And I'm up there trying to explain this to the Committee of Conference, and it's pretty dense and complex. Fortunately, they took Amy's word for it and adopted the estimate that we thought was appropriate. But I'd made a promise to that committee that I would be bringing forward a proposal that would help to bring more certainty and structure to this dynamic so that we did not have that level of uncertainty hanging out there during a difficult budget year when all of you are trying to get much more certainty as to the dynamic you're looking at because you're having to make such tough choices across the board. So that's the policy principle. That's what we're trying to get at. Amy, would you like to
Sure. So
take over?
I'll take over and go over the slides. Good morning, everyone. So as we're referring to RSA 408B13, that is the credits that are allowed against the premium tax returns for the assessments that the companies paid. So as you'll see, a member insurer may offset against its tax liability and up to its tax liability under RSA 400A, any assessment described for life and annuity or under the health account where it pertains to disability income coverages only. Currently, the credit is allowed at 20% of the assessment for each of the 5 calendar years following the year that the assessment was paid, but not to exceed their tax liability again. So what brings us here today was what DJ was mentioning, Colorado Bankers Life Insurance. The life companies paid an assessment in 2024 totaling $35 million based on their annuity premiums in the state. So the credits taken over 5 years means their total allowable credits would be $7 million per year. Due to the manner in which we collect our premium taxes, the insurers will pay their premium taxes due this coming year end for calendar year 2025. We'll be collecting them in March. Less the estimated payment made on their March 2025 return, so last year's return. And then we're going to add in an estimated prepayment for their calendar year 2026 premium tax return. So since the carriers are paying their premium taxes in advance, the current year's premium taxes will be reduced by the amount of the allowable credits as well as next year's prepayments, which means that during the first year of allowing the credit offsets, the revenue impact is potentially doubled. So it's the credit amount plus their prepayment amount, potentially doubled for the first year, which creates lots of unpredictability. During the 6th year, after all the credits have been taken, we see what would be an increase to the revenue due to the estimated prepayment credit, which is the prepayments they made during the 5th year, being less than what they would have been had there never been any credits allowed at all. So therefore, to put that in perspective, due to the insolvency of Colorado Bankers Life Insurance, the allowable tax credits will be $7 million of potential revenue decrease. The first year will be $14 million, but then during the 6th year, we could see a potential $7 million increase in revenue, which eliminates that double impact of the offset in the first year. I know that's kind of confusing. That's why I put it in writing to kind of digest and we can talk about it more if you have questions.
Jordan?
If you want to turn over to the next slide, I tried to put together an illustration of what the financial impact might be based on multiple assessments. And the next slide after that, we'll look at a large assessment because that's really when this will come into play and make a difference. So as we've mentioned, the financial impact is really indeterminable because we can't predict when a company will be liquidated and how much those assessments might be. The financial impact is going to depend on the size and or the number of the assessments levied by the association. So in this first illustration here is based on multiple assessments. I just put the first assessment was $35 million because that's what we had, showing $7 million a year for 5 years. If, for example, next year there's a $10 million assessment that goes out, we're looking at adding $2 million a year to that. The year after that, a $5 million assessment, that would be $1 million per year. And a couple of years after that, another $5 million assessment going out. You'll see that on that bottom line there, the only year that would be impacted by this proposal, which is if we hit or exceed a $10 million cap in any one year, the credit would be reduced from 20% for that year down to 10%. So in this example, 2029 exceeds the $10 million cap, reducing the credit to 10%. That's how it would work. And the impact of that would be potentially half. So going from 20 down to 10 instead of an $11 million impact, we would have potentially a $5.5 million impact.
Super clear, straightforward, right, everyone? All right. I think we've gone long enough with our presentation. At this point, I think how we can best be helpful is to take any questions you have.
Yeah. Question, if you don't mind.
That's why we're here.
Good to see you again. I saw you at the committee. Thank you. The, this is going to smooth out the impact because it reaches a cap of 10 million. And then the percentage that is paid, is taken as a tax deduction is reduced from 20 to 10. And it's spread out over a longer time period to make it up. So there's an impact on the industry, but there's a less of an impact on the state revenues.
That's correct.
Let me jump in. Right now, it is 5 years that they can take that credit, and the House bill has it written up as to stay 5 years and clarify that as 5 years. I think that
So the industry is not going to receive the same amount of credit it would if the cap of 10 million is
yes,
reached.
there's the potential of that. Currently, some of the companies don't receive their full credit anyway because it's up to their tax liability amount. But yes, that could potentially impact the companies.
So a company that deals in risk is taking a risk.
And I would also mention, Mr. Chairman, in this context at least, if that carrier has a large annuity book of business, we don't tax annuities at all. And so we were comfortable leaving the structure in place as it is before you now. However, Mr. Chairman, if that was a concern that you have, that ultimately the carrier wouldn't be made whole over some number of years, absolutely, you could extend the number of years over which they could get the credit. The question, and it's a policy one for you all to make, is how long do you want to have that potential obligation hanging over you in terms of the potential impact on the insurance premium tax?
All right. Will you take questions from the committee?
Of course.
Mr. Clerk had a question.
Yeah, thank you. So just to summarize what I've heard today, what we're talking about it is not increasing or decreasing overall revenue to the state, just a matter of timing. Is that correct?
I think fundamentally, yeah.
Yeah, and again, that goes back to whether or not you were to allow carry forwards of those tax credits, whether it stays 5 years or carry forward. Now, I can give you one example which might help clarify a little bit, because this assessment was based on annuity premiums, which we don't even collect a tax on. So we have a company that writes business in the state. They had a lot of annuity writings, very, very small, or let's even say non-existent life premiums that we collect taxes on. So we would collect a minimum $200 tax from them, but yet they paid maybe $1 million assessment to the Guarantee Fund Association. If we were to carry that forward, this is a silly example, but it would take 8,475
days.
years that company could carry that forward, that we would collect no premium taxes from that company. So I would definitely recommend if you consider carry forwards to put
Right.
a time limit.
Yeah,
Well,
follow up on
Representative
that.
Ohm, I just want to make sure I clearly answer your question. One of the objectives is to smooth out the potential impact of an insolvency. But when this dynamic plays out, there's less insurance premium tax because the money's gone into the guarantee fund instead. So I don't want you to think that like the state's going to make its IPT obligation, but just might make it longer or over a greater number of years. No, you're talking about an actual decrease in IPT revenue.
Okay. You all set?
Yeah, just, that's the important point. I can understand timing issues with cash coming in and out, but I really want to understand the net impact over the period of time that that we collect the cash. So we do collect less money with this bill.
No.
We don't collect less money.
No, we would end up collecting more because the
Collect more money
companies.
with this bill.
What's that?
Yes, so I'm just trying to react to what you're telling me to make sure I heard it properly.
Okay.
So under this bill, we collect more money to the state of New Hampshire than without this bill.
Correct.
And are those numbers quantified in your presentation?
No, I can show examples, but without knowing what companies will become insolvent and what assessments might go out.
Yeah,
But as we go through the other slides, that might help answer that question, I think.
Okay, I think
Yeah.
the ranking member has a question.
The ranking member wants a little bit of clarification. I didn't quite follow that last bit. How do we get more money out of it when we're losing money because the IPT isn't producing as much?
Because if the credits are reduced, the companies are actually able to take less of a credit on their tax return, meaning we're keeping more of the revenue.
But in the end, you said we would have less money. Where's this money going then in the state
Are you,
or wherever?
are we going back to carry forwards? Or if we just keep it 5 years, no matter what?
If we do what you're requesting we do,
Mhm.
then you said we'd be getting less IPT. It's just that we're getting less IPT, but for longer?
No. I'm not sure at what point I said we'd be getting less money. I'm sorry.
Mm.
I think, if I may, Chairman?
Yes.
or Vice Chairman, I can help clarify because I came from the industry. So what they're saying is they're trying to limit, how far out can the insurance companies take this credit?
Mhm.
And so if the insurance company pays more into this, toward this insolvency, but they only can take like 5 years maximum credit with a cap at 10 million, we keep the difference, we the state. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
I had another question.
Okay,
Is there any way that we can undo the severe damage that the Senate did 10, 15 years ago? When they decided that they were going to avoid a problem with the budget that year by saying that the agencies had to all of a sudden prepay so that we get this up, down, up, down.
That policy choice predates me, certainly at the department. Amy, were
Me
you?
too.
My understanding is that the only way we get out of it is by paying back the insurance companies for their prepay and getting back on a normal basis, but
that's not the
That's-
subject of this bill, is it, Representative? But
I think it has to do with where we are at this point. We're getting more and more into
And
weirdnesses.
Representative Almy, as always, I'm happy to talk with you about that offline and get a better understanding of that history and take a look at it.
any further questions, ma'am?
No.
Okay. Representative Schaumburg? Schamberg. There's an A in there, one of these days.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And for Commissioner Bentoncourt, you mentioned that this keeps the taxpayers off the hook, all right? Can this bill be viewed as a structural subsidy
Subsidy, in what way?
for the insurers? The state is gonna make them whole.
Well, that's the way the system is set up now. That's That's not anything I've created. Guarantee funds and associations have been around for a very long time. They were intended, as I mentioned, to be a backstop when, in the fortunately rare, but potentially very significant in terms of its impact occasion, when an insurer goes insolvent, and then what becomes of the policyholders. So that's why this mechanism was created, to backstop against that. So a structured subsidy, I'm not quite following that. I
I'm just
apologize.
looking at like tax credits and things like that for businesses. We use that. I just wonder if this is a sort of a same kind of approach that.
I don't see it that way.
Okay, thank you.
If I might, Commissioner, what you were saying is current system subsidizes the industry when there's a loss by one of the members, or at least repays them through this tax credit system that currently exists. And what this bill does is changes that reimbursement.
So for me, your description of that, I think, is very good. I just don't think that subsidy is the appropriate descriptor for it. And Amy maybe can explain better why. No, she says no.
She's got the glasses on, so she's the one that knows.
That's it. But however you want to label it, it's a longstanding system. And again, its intention is to, like I said, protect consumers when an insolvency happens by forcing the other members to contribute into this fund. And again, what we're focused on in that whole dynamic is when they've been, when they're required to pay into this fund and they've got that assessment credit, what do we do about that as it pertains to its impact on the insurance premium tax and the revenue that we take in for that?
Thank you. Representative Opal?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and just to let you know, I got a couple of questions, so I'll be asking you for a follow-up. But Commissioner, just so I've got it in my head, as I understand this, essentially what we're doing is we are assessing when an insurer fails, we're assessing other insurance companies to cover that, which obviously is stabilizing the system and making sure that people have some faith that the insurance industry generally is.
One significant correction. We, the state, nor the department are doing that. The New Hampshire Guarantee Association is the one that is doing that. So I just wanted to be clear on that point.
If I may follow up, but every insurer in the lines that we talked about is required by law to participate in that guarantee association, correct?
That's right.
If I may, just to help me as I go through the multiple assessments example, in year 2029, when the $10 million cap under this bill would be exceeded, essentially, am I correct in understanding that the assessment number one or company number one would be assessed, instead of 7 million, would be assessed at 3.5? Is that what we're doing?
Right.
So that each one of these assessments, the 7, the 2, the 1, the 1, each one of those would be cut in half for their credit.
Right.
Ignoring whether they, whatever their full tax liability is. We assume that in this case, the tax liability is higher than the assessment. Okay. Then if I could ask one last follow-up. I think I now understand this process, and it makes sense. One concern I have, Commissioner, you mentioned taking care of policyholders, the insured, who are insured by a company that has failed. Is there some easy way to describe? Is there a formula by which they get 50% or 70%, or in terms of what they've paid, or in terms of their coverage? You said their coverage might be reduced, and I'm just wondering what impact that has.
The short answer of that is yes. And the formula can get very complicated because part of what drives what the policyholders will get as a result of the formula is also tied up in what you get back when you liquidate all of the assets of that carrier too. So in the case of Colorado Bankers Life, this is a little bit humorous, but it's been a heavy morning. This particular company had made investments in a company that made trading cards for Pokemon, which was a enormous asset. Very popular here in the United States, very popular in China and Japan, huge asset. Not every carrier is going to have an asset or investment of that kind, but I hope it illustrates to you what I mean, that after you're done the process of liquidating all of that, then you see where you stand, and then it goes through the formula to determine what the consumer, the policyholder, is going to get paid out under that.
So the company's officers weren't completely stupid.
As I mentioned, there are some folks sitting in federal
Dirty.
prison.
Just dirty, just
You
dirty.
know,
Yeah, just dirty. Okay. Thank you.
you bet.
Appreciate it.
Don't get them going.
Well,
Just
it's-
to add to that, as I looked at the Guarantee Fund Association's webpage at www.nhlifega.org, and they do have some limits here as far as to how much the policyholders may be made whole. So in life insurance, up to 300,000. Colorado Bankers was annuities, so that was it says up to 250,000 per annuitant. So there are different limits for different lines.
Representative Spar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Some just remedial questions. I'm just trying to understand a little bit better. With the Colorado Bankers failure, the policyholders here in this state is the liability of the state to make sure that they're covered. Is that correct?
Well, it's the responsibility of the Guarantee Association to make sure that they're covered up to the limits.
In the state here,
Yes.
of the policyholders,
Yes.
Right.
based on their residency?
Yes.
Okay.
based on residence.
Is there a national guarantee, anywhere we can reinsure nationally, any of that liability?
Olga.
There's a national organization that I think oversees the state's Guarantee Fund Association.
When you say oversee, do they, is it insured as well? Meaning that if we need to rely on, there's no formula where we go to a national level, like the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation?
No.
No.
So far as I can tell, they're more of an organization that oversees all of the 50 state guarantee associations and helps
Okay,
coordinate and set.
but no
policy.
national reinsurance or
No.
cover, okay.
No.
One more follow-up?
Yeah.
This current system we have it seems to me it's reactive, meaning if there's a failure, then we assess. Has there ever been in the past, or has there ever been in thinking as far as making it a proactive system?
Well, it would be hard to do because you don't know the size of the company that could potentially go insolvent. And so you're going to ask companies to pay into a fund for how long and to what amount for something that may or may not happen.
And I would think there would be certain things you could do to limit that and or to, it would certainly limit the risk when an event happened, especially if a large event happened. There'd be a fund there. It's a rainy day fund essentially.
Right. I don't want to speak for the organization, the association, but I think maybe for example, Colorado Bankers, the New Hampshire companies were assessed 35 million. If after it's all said and done, they only used 30 million of those dollars, I believe they can choose to either refund the insurance companies a small portion or hang on to that 5 million and apply it, reduce their next assessment that goes out. But
Are there any other questions from the committee? Thank you very much. Good to see you again, DJ.
Very nice to see you as well. I noted that you have a work session scheduled. We'll have folks here for that. Appreciate your patience, everybody. Please, if questions come up, let us know. We appreciate that this is complicated to say the least.
Is this association showing?
Yeah, right here. Okay. Your turn. Henry Lou, the American Council of Life Insurers, for the opposite point of view.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Henry Vayu, and I'm here on behalf of the American Council of Life Insurers. I checked off opposed on the card, but we have been talking with, the association has been talking with the department and hope to get to some agreement on the specific language of the bill. DJ and his team, we've worked with them in the past, and they always have an uncanny ability to get folks to yes. So I'm optimistic that we can get there. And we fully understand what the commissioner is trying to do, which is to limit the state's exposure, if I want to use that word, since we're talking insurance, in a catastrophic insurance failure, which they don't happen often. And I think the insurance commissioner is trying to look at the real catastrophic ones and protect the state's revenue. And we are happy to work with the department to accomplish that goal. A couple of things we want to address is there's a figure of $10 million of a cap in credits, above which, if it goes beyond that, that's when this would kick in. So $10 million, the failure of a company would be $50 million. And so what we want to do is also have it reflect inflation, because a catastrophic failure today versus those dollars in 10, 15, 20 years, the catastrophe is less in 20 years when the dollars are, you know, what a dollar is today versus what a dollar is in 15, 20 years. So we want to address that issue. And then the second issue that we want to address is sort of this cliff where if there are 9.9 million in credits that, and again, these credits come because our members are trying to help the policy holders of those that were part of a company that went failure. Our companies are trying to stay solvent. And so we're being asked to chip in to help these folks, which we're happy to do. And then this issue deals with the credit that we get against the premium tax. And so you go from 9.9 million, where you get that 20% credit, and then 10 million and $1, and boom, there's this huge cliff. You lose half of the credit. And addressing that in future years. So that's what we want to talk with the department about. But we're fully happy to work with the department and understand the goal is to protect the state so that you don't have these huge dips in the insurance premium tax. And I know this is not an early bill. I spoke with the chairman yesterday, so we would just ask for a little more time to work with the department on this.
Thank you. I think that can be worked out, and I'm sure the chair will schedule a intensive work session so that we are all aware of what's going on. I didn't speak for him, I just said. All right. Are there any questions from
Me.
Representative Almy?
Thank you. Mr. Vayu, how long do you think this process of negotiation may take? Are we talking about putting this in interim study Or are we talking about next Monday, we can do something useful?
Well, we're ready to go. It's a matter of getting, our tax people. And I know, I see the commissioner in the hallways in the Commerce Committee and this committee and other committees. And so it's just a matter of getting, what the schedule's like over these past few weeks and the upcoming ones. And so it's a matter of getting folks together. But we are going to make every effort to, and again, are happy to participate.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to testify on House Bill 1194 FN? Hearing none, public hearing is closed. And while the chair makes his way up here, the next bill up will be 1144, so the prime sponsor should be making their way up. That sounds like a reasonable bill. Well, Mary does.
Yeah, we may need to index that, because I see what it's saying. As soon as you're at 10,000,000.1, now it goes to half.
Yeah.
It's got to be indexed in some way.
Well, they'll come up with some language.
Yeah.
Terminal.
The time being 10:54, I'll open the public hearing on HB 1144. And ask Representative Schamberg to introduce the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and House and Ways Means Committee. I am Representative Tom Schamberg of Merrimack 6, towns of Wilmot and Sutton. I'm also on the Wilmot Select Board, serving my 12th consecutive year representing the residents and businesses of Wilmot. I also attend the Select Board meetings of Sutton on an average of twice a month. In conjunction with the New Hampshire Municipal Association, the reason for telling you of my Select Board background is why I've introduced House Bill 1144, the excavation gravel tax increase, for your consideration. Sitting on my Select Board in Wilmot and also listening in on Sutton Select Board meetings, residents have come forth expressing their frustrations considering the excessive increases in their property taxes. House Bill 1144 proposes a modest and targeted update to New Hampshire excavation tax that preserves the existing structures while strengthening municipal finances. Under current law, RSA 72-B, excavated earth is exempt from property taxation and instead taxed at the time of removal at a rate of 2 cents per cubic yard. This tax is established in state statute and overseen by the DRA and collected and fully retained by the municipalities where the excavation occurs. House Bill 1144 does not change that framework. It raises only the rate from 2 cents to 4 cents per cubic yard while leaving all definitions, exemptions, reporting requirements, enforcement mechanisms, and local retention provisions exactly as they are today. Importantly, this bill does not create a new tax. It does not divert revenue to the state. It does not impose additional administrative burdens on the towns or operators. Gravel and earth excavation place disproportionate stress on roads, bridges, and public safety services, yet those costs are borne by the property taxpayers. House Bill 1144 realigns impact with responsibility by modestly increasing an existing locally retained fee rather than raising property taxes. I respectfully urge the committee to recommend this bill as ought to pass. Yours in public service, Representative Tom Schamberg.
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
And you do have in front of you a spreadsheet, if you can read it, of the towns that do receive excavation gravel tax money. And you'll see that the last year was 2021. And I think there's a slowdown somewhere in the system. And it's not the local communities. So,
Yes, question. Representative,
Thank you.
I'm sorry,
Oh.
no, Representative Ullery.
My friend, when this bill was put in, there was a quip from a junior member of the board at the time that said something about taxing the air you breathe from the dust associated with sites. Hudson is a town that has a rocks, and we get some money off of that, which is fine. And yes, there is some roads, but when you're doing excavation, you're building things with it. And if you increase the cost of your aggregate material, aren't you also increasing the cost of a house or a factory or a foundation or even the roads themselves?
with all due respect, it's been 28 years since this went into effect. And I think if we'd have caught up, used inflationary language over the years that should have been built into the RSA, it only increased 104%, which went to 4 cents per cubic yard. Yes, it does cost to the operator. You're dropping from 2 to 4, going up from 2 to 4 cents. But what was the cost for them in the beginning, and what are they charging now for excavating the gravel? I'm trying to understand the larger picture you're asking me. The town still has to repair those roads, those bridges, for the public to travel on. And this increase is not going to break the operators of the gravel pits.
Thank you, Mr.
Representative Spar.
Representative.
Well, I think he actually was first.
You want to go ahead?
Okay, Representative.
Just so I understand, the 2 cents back when that was done is the equivalent of 4 cents today. And as you said, it would just
Correct.
be inflation adjusted.
Correct.
So just one more question. If I understand you then, and this is sort of Representative Ullery's question is, over the last 20-some years, whenever this tax was originally put into place, each year, because of inflation, these gravel companies are paying less and less to maintain the roads, maintain all the infrastructure that they are, contributing to their depreciation of. They're paying less, and the taxpayers are paying more, just because it has not gone up with inflation every year.
I will say this, it's not the operators themselves that are putting the big equipment out on the road. It's
Right.
others come in, load it up and go. It's a balance.
Representative Almy.
Thank you. I just managed to read that. I'm going to have to look at it again. Lebanon got $6,436, I think it is, dollars in whichever year this was. Lebanon has one of the largest on gravel making facilities in the state. During Hurricane Irene, when half of the roads in Vermont were destroyed, we sent all of the gravel over there that they needed, and we had to get. Fortunately, it was the Great Recession. President Obama gave us a temporary bridge when the bridge went out. The people in Hanover were quite upset because when the bridge went out until that came, they had to see those trucks coming through their town, past the students jaywalking and all the rest of it. But we have enormous costs local costs in terms of these gravel operations because half of our stuff goes to Vermont. And the feds will not allow those trucks on the interstate bridge. So they have to come through downtown, or rather, well, through one of the downtowns. So I do not think 4 cents is anywhere near enough given the circumstances. Thank you.
So that was a would you believe?
That was, would you believe?
Okay.
What I wanted to say and end here, 1998, $1. It equals about $1.99 in 2026. So if you apply that same adjustment to the gravel tax, you're only talking 4 cents today. And I think it would benefit whatever towns have those pits. Wilmot only got $35 in 2021 because the pit moved over next door to another town.
I was just looking at Salem, which I represent. Salem got 0. So doubling the tax is going to bring 0 to Salem. But despite that, and I don't disagree that inflation adjusted, it should be whatever, 4% or higher, 4 cents or higher. However, in a time frame when we're talking about a lack of affordable housing, and this cost may not be that much, but we keep, in each thing saying, well, it's a little bit here, a little bit there, and we still don't have affordable housing. So I guess I would ask you, how important, given the revenues are so small on this, why add an extra cost right now when we do have a affordable housing crisis?
Well, I think I might have 2 answers. First of all, this money is going directly back into the town. It's not going to the state, so they can address their affordability by using this money, even if it's 0. Okay, but other towns can use this money for that. The land use change tax has kept pace with inflation. It was built in somehow into the RSA. And I don't think a 2-cent increase is going to break the operators or the haulers. They've been under inflation for the last 28 years.
Does this affect a homeowner who's excavating a lot, or is this only town-related?
I would like to have the municipal association maybe answer that question, because I don't see too many of us taking a cubic yard and putting it in our pickup trucks or things like that. Well, you could, but tip in the air probably.
You need a 5-ton, but.
All right, any other questions? Representative Spar?
Just one, when you say, what I think what Mr. Janigan's saying is, when you have that tax on those goods, the real estate may go up a little bit as far as costs. But you're saying all this money goes to the town, so then the town has this money to offset real estate taxes. So it keeps your, it's a wash.
It is a wash.
Is it a wash? Because if it goes to the town and you're saying everyone's tax rate's a little bit lower, that change is so much smaller than the person who just built a house and had to excavate land.
Correct, but
See
the
what I'm saying?
saving, the dollars are the same. It's just borne by one person versus the whole community.
The dollars are the same, but the impact is to the individual area of excavation. So if it's a house lot that needs to be excavated, they're paying that extra tax, and it's adding to the total cost of that house being built.
Correct, but then we all have a little bit less in our real estate taxes.
I would say when property taxes go down, it allows the community to make a decision if they want to put a warrant article out there that says, let's raise this. And people say, since I have more money in my pocket, I can go forth with that concept, which would help address your affordability issue for others.
Representative Murphy?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for taking my question. Would you believe that this is not just going to affect homeowners, but we just carved 42 acres out of the forest for farmland, and we had Francistown Sand and Gravel go fetch organic. A farm was going out of business, if you will. We had them scrape, their amended soil, bring it to our property. It took truck after truck after truck, and then we had to spread it all out. And so that would have really, made a huge, well, at least a significant difference for us because of how many, cubic yards of soil we were moving.
Well, this was sand, gravel, and rock are the only three. This was just gravel being affected, nothing else in the bill.
Are you sure? Because when you reference that other bill, I just looked at it, and it looks like it says soil, and soil is, not really, that's what I moved was soil.
And I think that's where there was some confusion before. I had a call from one of the operators that did bring that up, and it's strictly gravel tax on gravel.
Except it says earth, the way this is.
Well, like I say, I think the municipal association can answer that question much better.
Okay. Thank you. Representative Elberger?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Schamberg, I'm not sure you can answer this, and I'm hoping somebody can. Typically, for an average house, how many cubic yards of gravel are being used? I'm trying to get an idea of what the impact would be on a home. And I don't know if there's anyone here.
I
who can
can't answer that.
Okay. Representative Opal?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative, for taking my question. Am I correct in understanding that excavation operations have an impact beyond just the excavation in terms of trucks and the impact on roads, traffic? So there are other impacts to property taxpayers beyond just perhaps the excavation of a particular foundation so maybe a particular property taxpayer may be paying a little bit more to get a foundation built, but they're probably going to end up paying a little bit more to repair the roads that are damaged by trucks, et cetera. Am I correct in understanding that?
Yes, you are. Or their vehicles.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Schamberg. Next, I have Brody DeShanes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the committee for taking my testimony this morning. I know this is a pretty esoteric issue, but it was a member request we received from multiple assessors across the state that flagged when they saw the state increase its fees, several of them in accordance with how, based on when they were established or last adjusted with inflation, many flagged that the excavation tax for gravel, the rate hasn't changed since 1998, flagging that adjusted for inflation, 104%, if you do it based on CPI, would be 4 cents today. So just to start with some clarity, the rate is currently 2 cents per cubic yard of earth as defined in RSA 155-E Roman 1, -E 1 Roman 1. The earth that is taxed under the gravel tax is exempt from taxation as real property under RSA 72:6 and RSA 72:13. So this earth that's excavated is exempt from property taxation currently. House Bill 1144 increases that rate from 2 cents to 4 cents. Again, when adjusted for inflation over the time span since 1998, it would come out 2 cents would be 4 cents now. The gravel tax is collected and retained locally by the municipality, and the revenue decreases the local property tax rate because it decreases the total tax effort. Based on some of the estimates in the fiscal note and that we've made, this would double the amount of revenue collected from the gravel tax, going from about $250,000 a year to about $500,000 a year statewide. Some municipalities collect and receive more revenue from gravel tax versus others. As the chairman mentioned, Salem does not have a lot of excavation pits going on there, but it seems Lebanon has a lot of excavation going on in their municipality. I want to flag too, as just to kind of, so the committee can picture how this would impact an operator. The average 10-wheeler dump truck can hold about 10 to 16 cubic yards of material. So the excavation tax currently paid by one dump truck of this size carrying that much aggregate is about 20 to 32 cents per load. Again, this is a small tax which can be almost viewed as a fee, which offsets the large exemption for market value for gravel pits, which is viewed as a business tax exemption from property tax locally. Regarding increasing housing costs, the revenue does decrease the total property tax levy, again, and most of it would just be borne in the operation costs of the gravel pits. I also want to flag that people building residential homes, they aren't going to qualify to pay the gravel tax because there's a certain threshold for the amount of aggregate or earth that you need to be excavating to qualify. So usually this is just commercial entities that file with the town and DRA, and they could be excavating a site and prepping it for commercial or industrial use, or just excavating a site and selling the aggregate because people need all different types of aggregate for building homes, landscaping, building roads, whatever you could, sand for the roads, as you probably have seen a lot of on the roads over the last few weeks. So we view this as a very modest attempt to bring this tax in line with its original intent of essentially offsetting that that business tax exemption of property taxes, very similar to how the timber tax operates and why it was established. And I'd be happy to take any questions if the committee has some.
Thank you. Representative Ellery?
You just indicated that the cost of building a home, let's say they needed some fill in the back to raise the foundation level up or to protect the foundation, is going to take several, as much as, well, we had one the other day that took a full 10 cubic yards to bring it up to grade. That is going to cost the homeowner to build a house. Is that not true?
Yeah, it would cost them based on, if you said 10 cubic yards, it would cost them right now about 20 cents in currently and under, if you were to assume that all those costs are passed on to the home builder, under this proposal to increase it to 4 cents, it would be 40 cents. So they would have to pay about 2 quarters.
Okay, now follow up, Mr. Chair. Thank you. And you also indicated that there damage that's done by trucks onto the roads and that the money would be used by the municipalities or you and the prime sponsor made that comment that this would help to offset those costs. Except if I'm not mistaken, commercial trucking already pays a fee for that precise purpose. Is that not correct? When the vehicle is registered?
That is correct that they do pay an additional, their registration is higher because of the type of vehicle it is. Our position is this gravel tax is not entirely just for offsetting the cost for the roads and that infrastructure. It's to pay for the tax exemption that they receive on this earth, right? So this, based on how earth is defined in the statute, they're not paying taxes on that. Similar to like with the timber tax, people who own that timber aren't paying taxes on the timber. They pay when they cut and it's been yielded, harvested, and they pay on the value of that timber. Currently, property owners get an exemption from this earth, and then when they excavate it, that's when they pay the tax. And so the goal of the gravel tax is to offset the cost of that tax exemption that every other property tax payer bears in the tax burden shift. So the goal is to add this so that it decreases, so the revenue from the gravel tax decreases the total tax levy or the tax effort required by when a budget is passed, if that makes sense, Representative.
No, thank you.
Representative Elmy.
Thank you. What would be the result if the gravel tax was eliminated and there was no exemption?
Then gravel pit operators would pay higher property taxes, and they would be incentivized to want to excavate more. I mean, that's kind of the purpose of the timber tax and the excavation tax, is to establish a way to not incentivize clear cutting or just mass removal of aggregate, right? It says you aren't going to be taxed for that valuable resource. In exchange, you'll pay only when you're extracting that resource. That's the goal. And that's what I was trying to explain to Representative Eulery, but maybe a little bit all over the place with too much detail. That is the goal, that this offsets that tax exemption. And as we've seen the value of these commercial lands continue to increase and the value of the earth that's exempt continue to increase, their exemption continues to increase, or the amount of assessed value that they're not paying on. But the gravel tax that's supposed to offset that exemption has not increased because it's just set at 2 cents in statute. It's been 2 cents since 1998. So we've had members that have pointed out it probably should be more in line with what the current property is valued at in today's numbers, which would be about 4 cents.
Do we know how much it would reduce total property tax? I mean, 500K, you said it would go from 250K statewide to 500K. So 500K spread out over the whole state. What is that going to do is that going to lower tax rates by less than a penny per?
Thank you for the question, Representative. That's difficult to say because some municipalities have a lot more gravel pit operations versus others. As you mentioned in the spreadsheet that Representative Schamberg passed out, Salem is not, there's no active gravel pits that are operating that meet the threshold to have to pay this tax. There are other municipalities like Lebanon or even the town of Ossipee where there is a lot of excavating happening all over the town because of the type of soil. They have a lot of sand. It's desirable. They're selling it even regionally. So it really just depends on the municipality. And I could try to get very granular with the data, but there are times where the gravel pit operators also aren't excavating over a quarter, over a year than in previous years, just based on demand, to my understanding. So I couldn't tell you an exact number.
Okay, so if we take a town that does have a gravel pit, so Lebanon does have gravel pit.
Lebanon has a mountain, which is now half removed, and they're still going at it. It's a major corporation across New Hampshire, but we're the main place.
Okay, so Lebanon looks like this was 2020, I guess,
Yeah.
6,436.
Yeah, right. It's really,
So let's say it doubles to 12,000. what is that going to do for the average tax rate? It's going to lower it by 0.001.
I'm not sure, not very much, but
Representative Ulrich.
Nobel laureate Friedman says that it doesn't have any effect whatsoever on lowering property taxes because governments tend to spend what they have.
that's irrelevant.
Well, and thank you for the comment, Representative Ullery. So the way that the way that the gravel tax is collected, though, it automatically it's considered a revenue and it decreases your total tax effort. It's not like the town just gets a check and is allowed to spend it on whatever. They receive that as a revenue, and when they set the tax rate, they have to decrease how much they're collecting in their total tax levy. So these towns aren't just getting gravel tax revenue and, just buying whatever they want, whenever they want. They have to pass that cost. They have to pass that revenue on to decreasing their property tax rate, very similar to how the meals and rooms tax operates.
Representative Malloy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking my question. I once represented a town on this list that is, according to this list, is now getting about $6,000 of this revenue. So it's double that amount. So it'd be $12,000 in their coffers. The town is pretty much zoned as a gravel pit, the whole thing. There's pits all over. I want to ask you about that comment about trucking and the roads, the use of these roads. There are a lot of those trucks that are going across these local roads in this town. Wouldn't this money even help some of that to mitigate some of the damage that's going on in these roads? Would you present that? Would you believe it?
Thank you for the question, Representative or commenter. Again, the way that it works on the municipal level, the financing, is it decreases the total tax levy that the taxpayers have to pay, the property taxpayers. Now, it'll make it so then the tax rate is lower to do the same infrastructure projects, especially if there's increased need for roads. So I just want to be clear, though, it's not like the purpose of the gravel tax is to collect it and then to expend it specifically on roads. And it's not like the municipality can just save it in an account and spend it when they want to expend it on a road. They need to use it to decrease their total tax levy.
Follow up? I understand that.
Okay.
I didn't mean to imply that it to be put in directly back into road repair. It's money that the town can put in its general fund. However, I want to get back to we spent a lot in this town. We spent a lot of time putting together a 10-year plan of funding a road program because of all the damage that was done. Because of the way the town is set up and the gravel pits and all that. Have you, in your work at the Municipal Association, have you heard of these kinds of things where these on local roads and town roads that they're just so heavily used that the towns can't keep up with fixing these and making them safe for residents?
Thank you for the question, Representative Malloy. Yes, it is a common issue in municipalities where there are heavy commercial or industrial use, especially like timber harvesting or, gravel pits, where those roads are used, local municipal roads are used more heavily, and the intensity, it's more intense use. And the gravel tax or the timber tax can help decrease the total tax burden on the property taxpayers and make it more easy to afford those upgrades, I think is what your question is alluding to, and we would agree, and we have heard that from our members.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your testimony.
Thank you.
Oh, a question. Representative Wars.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for taking my question. And thank you for such clear testimony. I really appreciated that. RSA 155E :1 talks about, and I've been looking it up here, Earth means sand, gravel, rock, soil, or construction aggregate, yada, yada, yada.
Mhm.
So I'm just curious how, unless this bill's amended, it sounds to me like earth is covering sand, gravel, rock, and soil becomes the problem in this RSA. So do you think this needs to be amended? Do you want to take a look at that? And because that, to me, I mean, I know the Republic, my side of the aisle, increased fees last year. We were pushing for fee increases, and I kind of see this as the same thing, basically. However, the soil issue here, I think that's going to need to be clarified if you're going to get support from this side of the aisle.
Thank you for the question, Representative. So soil is already in the existing law. So
Right.
that's, and, you know, soil is, I mean, I think there's two things to remember. It's pretty hard to excavate everything else you just described without also excavating soil. And I don't know how DRA would be able to ensure when they go inspect these sites, what soil should be potentially exempt from what they're excavating. The purpose of that list and how they define earth is to make sure everything that you're excavating, once it meets that threshold that you've excavated enough to have to pay the gravel tax. There is something that, to your question too, that I think is relevant, is that an issue that's been pointed out by some of our members is sometimes people meet this threshold and they pay a very minimal amount of gravel tax, could be $5 or $10, and the municipalities don't see the benefit in sending someone a tax bill for $5 to $10. So we would be interested in increasing potentially the threshold for when you start paying the excavation tax. So then smaller people that might be doing a larger residential development who accidentally meet the threshold won't be caught in, because the reality is a municipal employee, you're gonna have them do an hour, you know, probably about $40 is their labor cost. To send certified mail that costs $10 to receive a $10 tax bill. So that is an administrative issue on our end, and we would be interested in working with the committee on trying, and DRA to address that administrative issue as we increase the rate in line with inflation. So that might be a way to get everyone more supportive of the bill.
Okay, follow up?
Follow up.
So thank you for that explanation. My concern is my wife is an environmental scientist,
Mhm.
and she has worked on projects where they come in and they layer off the earth.
Yeah.
So my concern is that the soil's gonna this can be layered off. If you ever live near a sod farm or so, I've watched this, and they'll go in and they layer it off and then replant whatever.
Yep.
So I think the word soil needs to be amended out somehow in order, it would have to happen for me to support this. Just, thank you very much. for your
No,
time.
and I appreciate the question. And just to clarify, as long as they're not extracting the soil and meeting that threshold where they have to pay the tax, as long as they're not taking it off site to sale, if they're just taking dirt and spreading it around or taking some of it off and leaving it on site for, like, those types of operations are not going to be impacted by the gravel tax.
No,
They
yeah,
never
I
have been.
understand, but I'm just saying that sometimes that dirt needs to be removed just to get it out of the way.
Okay,
That's my concern. Thank you.
thank you.
All right, Representative Malloy.
Quickly, thank you. I missed it. What year did you say this was last adjusted?
1998.
Thank you.
Okay, now thank you for your
Okay,
testimony.
thank you.
Okay, next I have Jim Michaud. Just this one and one more.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. For the record, my name is Jim Michaud. I'm the Chief Assessor for the town of Hudson. I don't have a terrible lot to add to the testimony that I've heard. I wasn't here for the introduction of the bill. I was across the hall. But just for Hudson, so in 2024, our excavation tax brought in $9,336. If this was adjusted to 4 cents, it would bring us $18,672. So all non-property tax revenue that comes in serves to lower the amount of the budget that needs to be raised from the property tax. This is one of those revenues. That is a fact. Beyond that, a 10-wheel dump truck can hold 10 to 16 yards of material. Currently, that's about 20 cents to 32 cents at 2 cents a yard. So that 10-wheeler truck, if this was 4 cents, would be about 40 cents to 64 cents. That just gives a little bit of scale to what we're talking about. when you look at other adjustments that have made to a severance tax, such as timber tax, white pine has increased since 1998. The rate for white pine category of timber tax has increased by 45%. Spruce, 63%. White ash, 200%. So that's the other severance tax. So those have been adjusted over time. This has not. In terms of current use values, so it's different, right? That is a direct property tax, but current use values have also increased in time. One category since 1998 has increased 53%. Another category has increased by 66%. So I think just the overall point is that the legislature has seen fit over time to adjust other taxes and other fees and other rates. And this one just hasn't been. So beyond that, that is it. That's the extent of my testimony.
So you didn't check off whether you support or oppose. I'm assuming you support the bill?
So I will have qualified support. The Hudson Board of Selectmen have not voted to take a position on this bill. As far as the assessing department, in the sense that this has the potential of adding to other revenue to reduce property taxes, I would be in support of this under that argument.
All right, so as a Hudson assessor, you support the bill?
I do support the bill.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and last but not least, again, I have Jennifer Ramsey from DRA.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Jennifer Ramsey. I'm Tax Policy Counsel for the Department of Revenue Administration. We just had a clarifying request with respect to this bill, and that is that because the excavation tax is administered on a property tax year, if this effective date could be squared with the property tax year or make it April 1, 2028, that would make this very easy to administer. If a mid-year rate change were intended, we'd have to think about a way to do a couple of short year processings of the way that the tax gets administered. So we could do that. We could work on some modifications throughout the statute and some new forms, but given the dollars involved, I'm not thinking that is the intent. So an April 1 effective date would be my ask. And I can try to answer questions if you would like.
Any questions?
I missed when you wanted it.
April 1st, 2028 would be ideal.
So, okay, effective date, instead of July 1st, April 1st, 28. Anybody else? Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to testify on HB 1144? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing on HB 1144. $17.08. Wait a minute. All right, time being 11:35, I'll open the public hearing on HB 1708, and Representative, we will need a pink card from you when you finish. You may introduce yourself and start.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to the members of the committee. My name is Mark Vallone. I represent the good people of Epping, Rockingham District 5. The bill before you this morning, HB 1708 FN, was inspired by my conversations with hundreds of my constituents during the summer and fall of 2024. When asked, "How can I help you as your representative?" the most frequent reply was to do something about property taxes. HB 1708 FN seeks to provide some property tax relief while still maintaining the state of New Hampshire's obligation to fund public education. There you have it. HB 1708 is a bill about a tax cut for the people who need it most, and doing this in a fiscally responsible way. So there's two goals, main goals for the bill. One is provide property tax relief to hundreds of thousands of New Hampshire residents. And two, maintain current levels of state support for public education. The bill cuts the statewide education property tax revenue by $90 million, approximately 25%, over a 3-year period, so that every New Hampshire property taxpayer would see a reduction in their property tax bill. Why cut the SWEPT? Because this is the most direct and simplest way this legislature can provide property tax relief. Unlike other bills that use sort of a Rube Goldberg device that interferes with the local control of our cities and towns without actually guaranteeing a tax cut, HB 1708 actually lowers the amount of property tax that gets collected. In essence, HB 1708 provides a property tax cut to every homeowner in New Hampshire in a way that respects local control and without micromanaging how cities and towns operate. HB 1708 will cut property taxes, but it will not create a hole in a school district's budget nor in the state budget. The bill would pay for the cut over 3 years by returning the business profits tax from its current level of 7.5% back to the 8.5% level where it was from 2001 to 2015, with increasing amounts of revenue going into the Educational Trust Fund. HB 1708 would raise the portion of the business profits tax that is put into the Education Trust Fund from its current 39% to 44% over 3 years, with a cap of $90 million by year 3. And that would continue from there in. The Commission of DRA would oversee a gradual reduction of SWEPT from $363 million to $273 million over that time. The Commissioner of DRA would also work with the Commissioner of Education to ensure that all school districts receive the same amount of revenue so that no district's funding is cut. Also, Jennifer Ramsey is here from DRA, and she really was very instrumental in making this bill happen. So if you have a lot of technical questions, I would call her up. So HB 1708 answers a pressing need for property tax relief while still supporting the vital service of public education. Unlike some of the most recent state tax cuts, this bill is fiscally responsible in that it's paid for by an increase in another tax source. Now, why do this? To help restore more balance in the tax burden in this state without further cutting vital services. Recent tax cuts have benefited large corporations and some of the wealthiest people in the state while ignoring the vast majority of property tax-paying families and individuals. To give one example from my home district of Epping, more than 3,500 property taxpayers would get a tax cut if HB 1708 becomes law. At the same time, there are just 140 individuals, businesses, and corporations in Epping that would no longer get the tax cut they've been receiving since 2015. But it would revert to paying the same level they had been paying for the 15 years prior. HB 1708 provides a modest tax cut, since the swept portion of a typical property is not that substantial. However, those savings are tangible, something the 3,500 plus property tax paying households in Epping have not seen. It's money in their pocket. These savings will help families to pay for more groceries, heating oil, gasoline, and also put money in the local economy. Isn't it about time that New Hampshire legislature cuts the one tax that matters the most to the people of this state? Shouldn't we have a property tax cut that's straightforward and doesn't try to handcuff cities and towns for decades to come? I urge you to please vote ought to pass for this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
I do have one.
Representative Spar.
Is it just so I understand, is it dollar for dollar, meaning that for every dollar that you're reducing swept, I mean, for every dollar you're bringing in from the increase in the business tax, it's going to reduce swept?
Right.
So there's no increase in taxes overall from this bill?
That's not the intention. The intention is just to substitute. That's why, and also it does it gradually over 3 years.
Okay. One more question. I was talking to one of my colleagues on the committee here, and his tax bill is $15,000 a year for his property where he lives. It's a modest home, and he's on a fixed income of $100 a year. So his swept percentage is 5% of that, so he's paying $750 out of his taxes, which is a substantial amount towards that tax. So if we reduce the swept, you're saying that would give him a tax savings there, maybe not that much because you said it would be graduated.
Right, about $180, $200, something like that.
But, and then it could increase potentially if revenues come in more.
No,
No?
no, it stays at that, so it would be. Like I said, it's not, this is a modest tax cut, but it is one that I think people would really appreciate.
So it's just
Let's do
shifting it from the homeowners to the businesses is what
Right,
it does. Okay.
that's correct.
Representative Opal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Representative, for taking my question. I'm wondering if you considered at all, one of the things about a property tax cut is that the people who need it the most tend to be at obviously the lower end of the economic scale.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if you considered, instead of sort of a broad cut to swept, targeting the cut to, say, people who are below the median household, targeting it to homeowners, first of all, and then homeowners in homes that are below the median. I think the median is roughly about $500,000 for a home in New Hampshire. If you'd considered that at all, or if you would consider it as an amendment.
Well, to be true to what I heard in my campaign, it was that, I mean, I got requests to cut taxes, property taxes from everybody. It wasn't just people with low income, but I think your point's well taken. I mean, I think that is one way to do it. It's to increase exemptions. But I do think using, again, the swept is a pretty easy target in terms of that.
Any other questions? I guess I just have one. Over the last, I would say, roughly 8 years, the state has cut the business profits tax from 8.5% down to 7.5%. To make New Hampshire one of the one of the most business-friendly states in New England, certainly, and also in the country. Raising it back to 8.5%. Doesn't that assume that there's no impact on businesses and that smaller businesses may have to let an employee go, or, what do you see as the impact to business on the rise
So
to 8.5%?
I'm sorry, excuse me. I called New Hampshire Fiscal Policy Institute and asked them a similar question. It's like, what's the connection? And they really couldn't find a strong causality in terms of cutting taxes. And I did come across a table for looking at GDP growth in New Hampshire And GDP growth is all over the place with the different tax rates. So it's a harder, if you look over time, it's a harder sell to say that cutting taxes automatically has had a direct impact on that. Now, I think
mean
in
raising
terms of I think certainly your point about messaging saying that Hampshire's business friendly, we cut the business tax. I think you're spot on that one. But I'm looking at the town of Epping where there's 3,500 people who haven't gotten a property tax cut at all, ever. And you got 140 businesses, corporations, and people who've gotten business property tax, and they've had those tax cuts. So I think 140, 3,500 people, 3,500 households, it's just no comparison.
Any other, yes, Representative Ulrich.
Regarding business taxes, and you talked to the New Hampshire Fiscal Policy Institute. I'm glad that you did. Did you take some comparative examinations from, say, Cato or Heritage or ALEC or one of those other fiscal policy groups?
I did Google. I'm sorry, no, I did not on that one, but
Thank you. Follow up, Mr. Chair. Real quickly, when a business is taxed, who pays the tax?
ultimately, everyone who uses that business. When property taxpayers pay the tax, it's families, it's people who are on fixed incomes. So it's a question of who benefits more from this tax cut at this point. And I would say in our history right now, the time has come to cut property taxes.
Any other, Representative Ami?
Thank you. Did you look at the effect of the business tax, a business tax increase, or a business tax cut, for that matter, of the essential services of businesses who cannot now afford their employees' access to housing? Sorry, I'm a little discombobulated today. On the effect of businesses not being able to find employees because housing is so expensive and we are doing nothing about housing now. And childcare is so expensive, and I believe we're just talking about getting rid of the last piece of childcare help. Did you talk to the businesses in your town?
Yes.
Thank you.
I agree. I agree. It's I mean, affordable housing, the ability to provide childcare for your kids, those are big issues in it. And I think, again, looking at the 3,500 people in the households that in Epping, where they're paying property taxes, $100, $200, $300, it's not much, but it is substantial. It does pay groceries. It does pay for gas. It maybe even pays for some babysitters that help keep a marriage together so the couple can get out for a little bit. So that any kind of help that they could use, I think, goes a long ways. And again, in terms of keeping families in the state, I have 2 adult children. Guess where they live? Not in the state of New Hampshire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking my question. So Epping at $15, an equalized tax rate, is one of the lower tax rates in the state, and that is thanks to the good job you've done bringing businesses into your town. Would it not be better to have the state recruit more businesses into the state, like keep the rate the same, but just make it up in volume, than jack up the rate and jeopardize our ability to bring new companies into a relatively undeveloped state?
Okay, the statewide education property tax has been in effect for 28 years. What tax cut have the people who've been paying that property tax gotten for 28 years? That's I'm going to answer a question with a question saying that. And I do think that regardless, Epping's had, now, Epping, I'm a lifer. People ask me, you know, how long have you lived there all your life? And I said, not yet. But I've seen the changes in Epping over decades. And you can go back when the business profits tax was 8.5% when Walmart and Lowe's
Yep.
came into Epping, right? And that didn't slow it down. I mean, they came in at 8.5%. We've had businesses have been coming in and year out, in part because of the location. Rockingham County's being north of Boston, close to the coast, whatever geographic factors you want to look at. We've seen consistent growth in terms of business coming in. And I really don't think that 8.5 is going to scare away anybody, because the volume of traffic coming down Route 125 and coming across Route 101, we're at the intersection. We're going to see businesses grow. In fact, I can see the construction going on right now on 125. That corridor from 125 from Epping to the Lee line now is all of a sudden filling in. So I just don't think that's going to make that hasn't been a factor. And again, people have been waiting a long time for tax cuts on their properties. And this is a real simple way to do it.
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are you aware that by increasing our BPT, to 8, as you propose, to 8.5, we will then be above Connecticut's rate of 8.25. We will also be above Massachusetts' rate of 8.0 and Maine's rate of 8.93. So a lot of the corporate migration we've been experiencing has been largely from Massachusetts in particular. And I would argue, or I would posit that it might, would you believe it might impact our ability to recruit life sciences companies and other companies that currently are showing interest in our state, because it's going to make us uncompetitive?
I think we're going to go back and forth on this one, because you also have talked about what Representative Almy talked about. If you can't get work people because they can't afford the houses, they can't raise their kids, because the property taxes, for one thing, are too high, then that's going to be a much more of a brake on business growth than the migration of businesses across state borders. I mean, you've seen that. So, and again, looking over the years, you've had different tax rates and you've had different GDP growth rates. And it's really hard. You can't find a one-for-one connection on that. So I think that's part of it. Also, we have no income tax. We have no sales tax. So that's the other, I think that's a big factor in determining where people come.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for taking my question. And Mary, you stole most of my thunder there, which I appreciate, actually, so. But have you considered just submitting a bill, just cutting property taxes 20% across the board for any property under $1 million? That would help a lot of people that are in the lower range of their income for a year.
And how would I pay for it?
We pulled the belt a little tighter, because as it was said earlier by Representative Ulrey, it doesn't matter how much money we have to spend. Both sides of the aisle are going to spend it. Democrats, they love to spend it, and Republicans seem to do the same thing. And the only way we're going to reduce property taxes is by cutting our spending. Thank you.
That was a would you believe?
Would you believe?
Would you believe? Okay.
Yes, I would. Would you believe?
Okay. All right.
So I just want to answer that question. The statewide education property tax resulted from a lawsuit, and the state has been in court for nearly 100 years because of the lack of state support for public education. And the state decided to come up with a system for paying for public education. And I find it so ironic, because I was taking classes at the time and we were looking at that, is that part of the reason the lawsuit came up was because people's property taxes are so high. So our solution for generating $363 million was to do what? Give another property tax. So I think that trying to come back to that. And the notion about spending, you can make that argument. We can keep cutting all we want, and perhaps we'll see what happens. But I would say that generally, the places that have really great schools in this state, they spend money, and that there's no dancing around trying to come up with really good education.
Let-
If you go-
Follow up?
Let me,
Sure.
let me
That's-
suggest that we, in the work session, we'll talk about it amongst ourselves.
Yeah, that might
But
be-
I need a follow-up here.
Um,
So my
Do you?
follow-up is, do you believe there's no correlation between the amount of money we spend and the outcome? So as in Chichester, student enrollment continues to decline, but the costs keep going up, and no matter how much they get, it's never enough. So we have under 200 students, we have a superintendent, assistant superintendent, a principal, or this or that. Last year, they wanted a new baseball team. I mean, it never ends. So property taxes can never go down. And if you institute an income tax or whatever, all you're doing is taking the money out of a different pocket of the taxpayer. We have to reduce the spending in the schools.
Okay, that's a would you believe question.
Would
and
you
I think-
believe?
I think
Thank
we
you.
need to
I
move
think
on.
we could be here a very long
okay.
time having that
Do we need,
conversation.
do we have more would you believe questions? I'd like to move on unless it's something new.
Right.
No, this is not a would you believe question.
Okay. Representative Elberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it's a pleasure to meet you, Representative Vallone. When you have spoken with business people, let me just take a step back. I can't remember in the last several years the business community coming in and requesting a tax cut for themselves. We've had representatives asking for tax cuts, but not businesses. So I'm wondering, when you have spoken to the business people in your community, what are they asking you for?
Property tax cuts. They're not asking for business profits tax or business enterprise tax cuts. They want property tax cuts. Because again, this bill, that's the other thing. This bill cuts taxes for everybody, for businesses, for individuals. It's very, it's very broad-based in the sense that it cuts for everybody. So some of those businesses that we're paying a little bit more in business profits tax, that they're going to see on their property tax ledger a decline. So it helps to offset that.
So
Okay.
just,
Again, I'm just saying,
I,
yeah, that's the.
just,
that's-
just to clarify, they are not asking
That
for
is correct.
taxes.
That is correct.
Thank you.
that could be because they're happy with the rate now.
They're not asking, sorry.
We're getting in the weeds now. Thank you very much.
That's right. Thank you.
And if you could fill out a pink card, Representative?
My apologies. I'll fill one out for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next, I have Zach Sheehan.
Good afternoon, almost. My name is Zach Sheehan. I'm the Executive Director of the New Hampshire School Funding Fairness Project. We're here to, in support of House Bill 1708. I had written testimony, but I'm going to try not to repeat what's been said before and just kind of stick to some things I think I could add to the discussion. At a high level, we do also see this bill as an attempt to reduce property taxes. It's intertwined with education funding because it's looking at the SWEPT. I think the approach of using SWEPT because that's the mechanism that the state has the most control over, since it is technically a state tax that you can just lower and really dictate that rate be lower as opposed to relying on local property taxes going down through a different mechanism like increased funding. But on that note, I will just add on that when SWEPT was introduced, as a result of the Claremont lawsuits, like you all were just discussing, that was an additive tax. So it was a brand new property tax on everyone's bill. It was in law, it was $6.60. In actuality, it's a little different, which is above my pay grade to understand DRA's equalization methods. But that increased property tax in combination with about $400 million increase for state adequacy fund dropped the average property tax rate around the state, inclusive of the $6 increase. And so that's some recent New Hampshire evidence that we have that increasing both funding for public education does actually pass along to property tax savings. A few other points is that there are, and I've been around for a while, and I know a lot of folks here as well. There's a lot of education funding related bills, some just heard last week, where one of the main criticisms is how are we going to pay for this? And there's a lot of hesitancy to engage in any conversations about shifting some of the responsibility to pay for education from local taxpayers to the state. And oftentimes that conversation is stifled pretty intensely around revenue discussion. So I think that this bill is an interesting and kind of narrow approach to provide some property tax relief and pair it with a revenue source, which at least on its face is something that is often stated as a condition under which we need to have these conversations and why we can't move forward with increasing funding from the state. A few other pieces. Relative to some of the questions raised about does funding actually impact student outcomes, is a lot of data that does show that increasing funding, not just across the board, but that funding for programs and services do have significant impacts on student outcomes. As recent as 2018, there's a New Hampshire Department of Education report, Understanding Funding for Students with IEPs. Compared to the national average, we do have a higher percentage of students with disabilities educated. We tend to spend a higher amount on average. That's not equal across the state. And we have some of the better outcomes due to that. Percentage of students with disabilities who graduate is one of the top in the country. Dropout rate's one of the lowest. More than 81% of students with disabilities who had completed high school the previous year were enrolled in post-secondary education. And that's a little snapshot of specifically those services. I know it's a bit outside the scope here, but just to kind of come back to the fact that that does have an impact. And we'll just end with kind of reinforcing the intent of this bill, which is really asking who should pay. There's roughly $90 million. Who should be paying that? Should it be business profits from the business profits tax, or should it be local property taxpayers? And I imagine this committee would have access to data that could help actually show which businesses would pay which amounts. By way of example, and this is my last point, I'm happy to answer any questions after that, is that a recent bill that's moving through right now, HB 155, that would cut BET. There's data that's come out where we have a sense of actually what that cut would give for businesses. It's about $565 per year for the average business would save with that cut. But for the largest 300 filers, they'd save about $30,000 a year. And so I would be really interested with this BPT increase, who actually would be paying that? Because there's a limit at which you have to hit before you start paying BPT. It might be something interesting for the committee to look at which specific entities are going to be paying how much in BPT increase compared to which specific, all residents that pay SWEPT would see a reduction. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you for letting me testify.
Representative Schamberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for taking this question. I will have a follow-up on this question. I just want to make sure businesses will see a reduction in their property tax if this bill were to go into effect.
Yes,
Okay. All businesses, right?
that is my understanding.
Okay, thank you. And the follow-up question, if this bill goes into effect, does that help lower operating overhead for these businesses?
I am not a business owner, but I
Okay.
would imagine that if you have a reduction in property taxes, that would help, where and when it would offset with the increase in BPT, I think would be the interesting thing to see.
Thank you.
Representative Opal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for taking my question. To your last point, is it not true that the majority of business taxes are paid by larger corporations, that most of the revenue that comes to the state is from larger corporations?
That is my understanding, although that is getting a little outside my realm of expertise, but that is my understanding.
Representative Ors.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for taking my question. So you mentioned that the state should pay more. Where's the state going to get the revenue from?
So in this bill, it would come from an increase in the BPT.
Okay, follow up.
Follow-up.
So if a company lowers their property tax as a result of this, are they going to pay more if they're paying more BPT?
Yeah, so that was the point I was trying to make. Thank you for the question. Is I would imagine that that data is available through the DRA or others that can tell you exactly that. For example, a business that is making $50,000 to $100,000 in profits. Here's the increased amount they would pay, and on average, here's what they would get in a property tax reduction. For businesses, with profits, 100 to 1 million, 1 million to 10 million. So I would imagine that that breakdown is available so that you can make a really informed decision about which specific types of businesses are receiving which specific, net result versus, lower property taxes versus higher BPT. There's going to be some point at which that's a trade-off. I would imagine that's that available, and I think it's a great question. I think it'd be great to have that so you can see specifically who's going to pay more and specifically who's going to pay less.
Thank you.
Representative Ulrich.
Thank you. Thank you for taking my
Sure.
question. On your previous comments, you talked about increasing the amount that the business would pay. If the business pays more in business profits tax, then they are limited in the amount of money they have available to meet their stock obligations, their bond obligations, and the larger corporations. They also have less money available to pay for employees. Is that not correct? Because you're taking more of their quote-unquote disposable income and giving it to the state to redistribute to those who are in need.
I think your question was if the business profits tax is increased, would the businesses that are paying more have less money? And I would say the answer is yes.
Thank you.
Representative Elmy.
Thank you. Would you agree that the businesses that would be paying higher BPT would be benefited by all of their employees not having to pay higher property taxes as well as themselves paying marginally lower property taxes? And that this could actually stimulate the state economy as versus the international, national corporate economy.
It is my understanding that housing prices, which are impacted by property taxes, and also rental prices, which are impacted by property taxes, that New Hampshire has an extreme shortage of available housing, and that housing, childcare, or something else that was brought up, it is my understanding that those costs are prohibitive for employees of potential companies, even for ones that can offer really high wages. So I would agree that reducing those costs is my understanding of what would benefit businesses. But again, I am not a business owner.
Okay. Seeing no more questions, thank you very much for
Thank
your
you.
testimony. Okay, that's it for pink cards. Is there anyone else who would like to testify on HB 1708? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Oh, Mr. Sheehan, could you, do you have testimony that you can give to the clerk in written form? Thank you.
Yeah, I know. I'm cannon fodder sometimes, you know. Yeah. I'll be sure to get your testimony when you go to get up there that you're written, and but just worry. Yeah, and I'll let that around, but just worry about down. You're free to answer questions. You also don't have to, if you don't want to.
The time being 12:10, I'm going to open the public hearing on HB 1293 and invite Representative Bolton up to testify.
Thank you, sir.
Story of my life. What's that? 4 hours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Bill Bolton, representative. Bill Bolton. I'm also representing the towns of Plymouth, Ashland, and Holderness. And I'm the sponsor of HB 1293, taxing certain properties owned by charitable nonprofit organizations. Mr. Chair, many New Hampshire towns rely almost entirely on property taxes to pay for basic services such as police protection, fire, roads, and emergency response. When a large share of property in a town is owned by a nonprofit organization that, excuse me.
We're enjoying you so much, it's entertaining.
I take it that you support what I'm talking about then? Yes. When property in a town is owned by a nonprofit organization that qualifies for tax-exempt status, that land does not contribute to the town's tax base. The cost of services, however, remains the same. This means that remaining homeowners and businesses must cover a greater cost of the budget, creating pressure on local taxes. In communities where nonprofit ownership makes up a significant portion of that property value, this imbalance can grow over time. And as service demands increase and the tax base does not, towns have fewer options to manage budgets without raising taxes or reducing services. So legislation such as House Bill 1293 generally aim to address this type of structural challenge by adjusting how exemptions are defined, applied, and balanced with municipal service needs. The goal of HB 1293 is to create a fair and more sustainable framework for both municipalities and nonprofit institutions. So under this bill, nonprofits with buildings and property valued at less than $1 million would remain entirely exempt from local property taxes. For nonprofits with a total valuation greater than $1 million, municipalities would have several options. They could tax the value above $1 million at the municipal tax rate, only. So they could tax the value above $1 million at the municipal tax rate only. That means that they only will be paying for the municipal portion of the property tax and not education and not county tax. Additionally, they could, by vote of the town meeting or approval of a city council, increase the exemption threshold to a higher level, such as $5 million, effectively exempting most smaller nonprofits. And thirdly, nonprofits that already have a payment in lieu of taxes, a pilot agreement with the municipality, would not own any additional tax for the duration of that agreement. And it could be renewable depending upon negotiations. So briefly and finally, for disclosure, I am the executive director of Transport Central. It's a nonprofit organization based in Plymouth. And as such, and even as a executive director of a nonprofit, I fully support this bill. And I would take any questions. Thank you.
Representative Schamberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking this question, Representative. Does House Bill 1293 require municipalities to tax charitable organizations?
Thank you for your question. And in reality, they don't have to. The requirement is that the municipality would either pursue taxing nonprofits that are over $1 million valuation, or that would also require them to have a special meeting, a meeting of the municipality, to exempt them from charging that
tax, or they could just enter in a pilot too. So multiple ways.
One follow-up, Mr. Chairman. Do you think there are some charitable groups or uses that could be carved out of this process and always retain their full property exemption?
I think there would be sympathy for carving out, certain either hospitals or, medical facilities that, I'm not certain how many medical facilities don't currently have a pilot with their towns and cities, because that's generally been addressed for some time. But should there be some medical facilities that aren't capable or in a position to pay the tax, then we could carve that out. Additionally, childcare. Plymouth has a childcare facility, and I'm sure a lot of others too that are nonprofit, and they might be have an exceptional burden to try to meet the requirements of a payment of a tax.
I have two questions. One is, would this affect churches? Would churches fall into this category?
So there are sections, not even in the bill. So churches are not in the bill, or not even in the language of the bill. And also universities, university system in New Hampshire are not also in the bill. So they're excluded.
Because they're not defined as nonprofits? What excludes them?
By federal law for churches, and so they would not be covered.
Okay. I'll skip my second one for now. Representative Opal.
Defer to the ranking.
Oh,
Okay.
thank you.
Representative Almy.
Yeah, I was beginning to feel a little invisible. There,
My neck doesn't turn that way.
Lebanon, oh, sorry. Lebanon has a number of charities that do the city's business, that replace the city. And that if we taxed them, they would either disappear, or else we would have to find a way to get them more money so that they could continue to do the good work that they do. Things such as people, housing people that cannot afford it. Lebanon has a housing authority, but it also has a nonprofit that is not based in Lebanon, which has put a lot of affordable housing for the lowest incomes in the city and is still running it. Lebanon has Listen, which was developed by Dartmouth students 40, 50 years ago at this point, which provides extra support for heating, for very small, for very low income people and low income people who can't meet the federal guidelines but who cannot afford their heating bills. They provide food and free food in our food shelves. They provide for clothing and other needs of families that come to them that cannot make things work, so that they can stay in the city of Lebanon. And it seems to me that it would be a very difficult thing to figure out how to exempt all of these groups, including the ones that were mentioned already. And I thought you were going after the University of New Hampshire in Plymouth, but you say that it's excluded somehow.
I would never do such a thing, but regarding Plymouth University, I think similar to other university systems that are, in Keene and Durham, there are, specific alternative attempts at satisfying their basically property ownership. And in Plymouth, there's a $400,000, essentially it's a life safety services agreement where they would cover the cost of, police that would be assigned to the university. In reality, it's kind of like a poor trade because the property that is owned by PSU, the university, would result in greater than a $5 million, annual tax that we would get from an owner of that property. And, we get 400,000 essentially. With regard to getting back to at least Lebanon, it wouldn't be such a chore to exempt any nonprofit that Lebanon would like to, exempt for the fact that if it's essentially we could target that in the legislation. What you could also do, though, is have Lebanon have a city meeting and just say the exemption for this bill in the town of Lebanon would not be $1 million. It would be like $10 million. Target it so that the concerned nonprofits would be covered by the new exemption.
So we already have that, if I could follow up. We already have that in Lebanon. The city council does the and I think the towns around us do that too. City council makes exemptions as it does the budget. But how could we get that to qualify for your language?
Is there like a bar that would accommodate all of your nonprofits that you're concerned about? Like $10 million, or, the council could say any nonprofit of less than $10 million valuation would be exempt from this bill.
And we already have a pill, though it took us 4 years and a lot of loss to achieve it with the Tertiary Hospital of New England.
As do we in Plymouth. We have, our hospital. In fact, they are the only nonprofit in the town of Plymouth that actually has a pilot. And, it's something we have been urging other nonprofits to establish a pilot, in our town too, but there's no mandate, so.
Representative Ohm.
Yes, yeah, thank you, Representative Bolton, for answering our questions. We've been using terms of charitable and nonprofit interchangeably, and there's, I believe, a very sharp distinction between the two. There's a large number of nonprofits, but a smaller subset of charitable organizations. It's your intention to have this only apply to charitable organizations and not the broader collection of nonprofits.
Yeah, so I know we had that brief discussion, previously, and I think this is targeting essentially, well, it doesn't state it, like 501c3s, but charitable organization, okay. Maybe, actually, I could probably defer to the municipal association, perhaps, and see if they could clarify what the difference, or whether there's a need to define the difference between charitable and nonprofit, or.
Yeah, if I may, I bring up this topic from the video lottery terminal discussions on funds going to charitable organizations. And under the law for VLTs, and I think in general, there's a clear distinction made between nonprofits, which are a broader group of perhaps social clubs, versus charitable organizations, which have a very defined mission of benefiting the public. And so I really want to press the point of making sure that what we're talking about, or which group we're talking about, the broader group of nonprofits or the smaller group of defined charitable organizations with specific missions to improve the welfare of the community.
I think we might need to maybe more carefully define it, or I think it might be acceptable the way the wording is currently. And actually, I'm thinking that as a nonprofit in the town of Plymouth, but we're also a 501c3, we get charitable monies from casinos. And I'm not certain if that would satisfy at all an answer for your question, but I think I'll let the municipal association take it.
All right, I'm just going to go around. So Representative Elmy?
Thank you. Just quickly, you say in the bill, charitable organizations and societies, which I think gets off into stuff that is
Yeah,
more difficult.
yep.
Okay, so you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. Representative Malloy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking this question. This is a specific example of a religious organization that owns a nonprofit that is well worth over $1 million of property and all that. You say churches are not involved in this, but so would this nonprofit then still be assessed property tax if it's owned by a church?
No.
Yeah, okay. Representative Elberger?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to follow up on Representative Malloy's question. If a religious organization, which is tax exempt, runs a for-profit organization, how would that affect them if they ran a store to just raise funds?
That's a good question, and I
Okay.
would imagine that that would be taxable. Why isn't it not taxable?
I do remember some nonprofit organizations that I worked with, or that I worked with their staff, who, in order to help fund their programs, ran businesses that had no specific connection to the services they provided, and then turned profits over. And that was part of how they had set up their company. But I'd like to get some clarity about that. My original question was, I'm reading this and it looks to me, regardless how we define a bunch of things, as municipalities are supposed to impose this tax unless they decide not to. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Opal?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank the distinguished representative for taking my question. And I actually, you talked about carving out certain charities if the town or I'm assuming town meeting or a city council chose to do that. That's the only way they could do it, is through raising the exemption threshold. Is that right? In other words, they couldn't just say, geez, we like the Boy Scouts, we're not going to tax them. We don't like the Girl Scouts, we are going to tax them.
Correct. It can't be capricious. It's like, pick a level and it's for everybody.
Follow up. Do you, maybe others have this, you may not be able to answer this, but do you have any metrics on how many charitable organizations would be, if the exemption were kept at $1 million statewide, any idea of how many charities would be impacted?
No, I really have no metric, and I think the closest we might be able to get some data from that is through the charitable gambling facilities, but even them wouldn't be like a statewide metric, but.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Bolton, I understand what you're trying to do with allowing towns to have a carve out and to raise the exemption level. But I guess my concern would be, and would you also have this concern that once we give the towns the power to tax, what is the incentive to raise that exemption limit, right? Because it's going to bring in more money. I mean, could vary greatly from town to town, where one town says, I don't care what nonprofits are here, we'll stick with the 1 million so we can increase tax revenue. Another town, you know, I would be worried that we're gonna have unequal treatment. What do you think about that?
That's a possibility, but I think
Yeah.
what's a probability is that, you know, even if this bill were to pass, and it would probably make more nonprofit entities negotiate with their towns or cities for a pilot. Because a pilot, once you establish a pilot, you're not going to be taxed.
Or what's the incentive for the town or city to increase that exemption limit? Because with this bill, if it passes, we've now given them the ability to tax a whole bunch of new entities.
So
Would you be
I think
concerned about that?
I think the easiest, well, getting back to the pilot though, I mean, that's, you know, should a town not just, you know, not decide to increase the exemption, then once a nonprofit that, you know, is, you know, the valuation is like 10 million, they could get into a pilot with their community and, you know, basically comply with the bill and yet not pay, you know, a large tax bill. So there's nothing to stop. There's nothing. You know, there would be nothing to stop a town from not negotiating or not you know changing the exemption from 1 million to 10 million or something.
Okay.
But
Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing none, thank you, Representative.
thank you.
All right, before I call anyone else, I'll just let the committee know I have 7 pink cards here, and now I have 8. And so what I'm going to do is limit, it looks like most people have written 2 or 3 minutes down, but I'm going to enforce the 3-minute rule. You know, the committee can ask questions afterwards, but I will cut you off at 3 minutes if your testimony still keeps going. And I would ask, as people go through, don't repeat the stuff that someone else has already said if you can. Please give us new information. Okay, with that said, as I go through the list here, Brody Deschaines.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, the committee, for taking my testimony this afternoon. For the record, Brody Deschaines, I represent the New Hampshire Municipal Association, and we support House Bill 1293 as introduced in support of our members who have requested it and in furtherance of our member-adopted policies. First, our association members appreciate the charitable services that nonprofit across the Granite State provide, and House Bill 1293 is not seeking to force every charitable organization to pay property taxes, and it will not force towns or cities to tax these organizations. So I just want to be very clear, and we are also, could be potentially impacted. I haven't followed up with our executive director about what that impact would look like, but just to be clear too. So we have to represent our members and their desires, so that's why I'm in front of you today to express at least a handful of them, how they feel about the current statute. So House Bill 1293 amends RSA 72:23, Roman 5, to emulate the paragraph in law above it, RSA 72:23, Roman 4. It operates in a very similar way. Churches will not be impacted because that's addressed in, I believe, RSA 72:23 Roman 3. So this is just charitable organizations. What is charitable? That is defined in the law already in RSA Chapter 72, specifically RSA 72:23 dash L. So that's in the statute already. What types of charitable organizations or societies, that term is already utilized in statute. I also just want to flag, Representative Bolton described how this bill would operate quite well, but I want to point out that the legislative body of a municipality, which is either the aldermanic board or city council in a city, or the voters attending annual meeting in towns, can increase the base amount of the charitable tax exemption locally with no cap on how much this can be increased. And it can be placed on the warrant by petition too. So it wouldn't just be the town's officials that place this on the warrant. Any 25 voters signing a petition warrant article could put it in the warrant and change what this exemption amount would be. The purpose of House Bill 1293 is to allow municipalities more flexibility and local optionality to implement charitable tax exemptions. We've heard from some of our members that municipalities want to ensure fairness in local property taxation and to ensure that the community benefits received by property taxpayers, residents, and municipalities from some of the charitable organizations are proportional to the exemption received. For example, how much services alleviate a local town welfare budget or provide services that otherwise would be provided by the municipality, county, or state. I want to flag New Hampshire isn't unique in having a proposal like this. North Carolina is also exploring this issue and trying to address, lots of property that's exempt that then creates large tax burden shifts onto property taxpayers. With that, I'll conclude my testimony. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Representative Almy, you look like you're heading towards your microphone.
Well, I just do not understand how the language over here protects municipalities that are already providing assistance to the charities that help the municipality do what the municipality has decided it needs to do for its people. It looks like the municipality is allowed to decide we're just going to tax anything over $1 million unless you change it to 10 million, which means that all sorts of other places get out of the property tax.
Thank you for the question, Representative Almy. So I do think the $1 million figure is actually a little low after talking with DRA about how many properties could potentially be impacted. And, when working with the prime sponsor, we thought $1 million was actually a lot, but I guess real estate prices have increased a lot more than we would have anticipated. So that is a reality. So we would be very amenable to increasing that $1 million amount and having specific carve-outs for especially organizations that have large regional impact that provide resources to a myriad of municipal residents across the state. I think to your point about, I think the question that you were posing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that, different municipalities would have different exemption amount. I think the flexibility that's added on top of that, though, is the ability to enter into a pilot, which is already established in law, and you can enter into a $1 pilot. What some of our members want is to look at the charitable benefits provided to the residents of the municipality and to look at it at a case-by-case basis. That's what some of our members want to do. So I think the question of the committee is, does it want to provide municipalities and their voters ultimately, and the vast majority of municipalities, the ability to have more local optionality in how this policy is implemented, or does it want to continue a statewide tax exemption required, mandated under 72:23 Roman 5 for all charitable organizations and societies that meet the definition of charitable in RSA 72:23-L. That's really what some of our members want the committee to consider.
Representative Opal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for taking my question. I'll ask you the same question I asked Representative Bolton, and it sounds like you at least have some notion of the scope of what we're talking about here and talking about, raising the exemption because you're covering a lot of properties. So do you have some number of either the number of charities or the amount of property valuation we're looking at that would be impacted by this bill?
Thank you for the question, Representative. So we don't have exact figures, but we generally know where some of those figures could potentially be found. I'm unsure what kind of information could be shared from the New Hampshire Charitable Trust Unit based on, regular filings and reportings, if the committee wants to review that. I also think right now on the MS1 form that municipalities have to fill out when, basically doing their reporting to DRA, it does have a line that describes how much property, buildings and property are tax exempt. It doesn't break out the what tax exemptions exactly. So we have an idea of total property and buildings tax exempt, but how much is that state building, county building, municipal building, charitable properties and buildings, and then maybe other potential, properties that are exempt under RSA Chapter 72. So there was a way to find this information. It's just, it could be administratively burdensome to collect all of it, aggregate it, and figure out how to comprehend it.
Follow just to follow up on the point the chairman raised in maybe sort of a different way. Are you at all concerned that giving this authority to either a local town or city council or aldermanic, that you create a real potential for within one community sort of picking winners and losers, but more broadly across the state, sort of the, if my charity happens to be a mile inside a border, maybe that town is choosing to keep the exemption at $1 million and not wanting to negotiate a pilot, and maybe a mile the other way and I'd get the exemption at 5. I mean, it seems to me there's the possibility here of real arbitrariness.
Thank you for the question, Representative. I can definitely see the committee's concerns and some of the limitations that this bill may have. I'll flag, I view that many of our members are extremely appreciative of the services that these charitable organizations have and how they operate in their municipalities. There's a big reason why we testified against a bill last week that would prohibit our members from providing local appropriations to charitable organizations, because many of our members provide money to the charitable organizations that are providing these services as a way to offset their welfare budgets. But from town to town, there can just be significant differences in different things happening on the local level that where municipalities want to have some level of this authority. I do think, a significant issue could be viewpoint discrimination if a municipality decided to exempt one charitable organization versus another without any real factual basis for why one got a full exemption versus another didn't. And they would have to work with their local legal counsel to address that. So I definitely, don't get me wrong, I see the limitations to the language that's in front of you today. But again, in furtherance of our member adopted policies, and because we've gotten member requests related to this, it was kind of expected, it was incumbent on me to come and testify and speak to the bill.
Thank you.
Representative Elmy.
Yes, can you think of a way to amend this to eliminate the extra legal costs? Because we've got enough of these legal reviews already in Lebanon that cost an enormous amount of money.
Thank you for the question, Representative Ball. I mean, I definitely could see the concerns. I think one way to get around any legal ambiguity would be to just increase the tax exemption to make sure that every charitable organization qualifies. And I think there's going to be a lot of charitable organizations that speak after me who might give the committee a lot of things to think about in the context of this bill and this policy proposal. So while I could try to draft something that would address that, I'm not sure how the committee is going to feel about moving forward with any form of this bill. So.
Seeing no more questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I have Jim Michaud.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. For the record, my name is Jim Michaud. I'm Chief Assessor for the town of Hudson. I am neutral on this bill. My thrust of my testimony is we don't know how much charitable exempt property there is in New Hampshire. Nor do we know how much religious, nor do we know how much governmental, nor do we know how much educational. The MS1 form, summary evaluation form, has 2 lines that lists exempt. It says land exempt, how much? Building exempt, how much? There's no transparency to it. No one knows which properties are receiving the charitable exemption. They can inquire. That's a lot of municipalities to inquire to. I would encourage this committee to examine a possible amendment to this bill to bring transparency to what properties are receiving these exemptions. And should there be a list available on the DRA website comprehensively across the whole state so we can see who's actually being exempt or partially exempt? Federal, state, county, village, religious, educational, charitable. There is transparency in the DRA's MS1 form on pilots, payment in lieu of taxes. So, and that is a electronically retrievable line on the MS1 because we file these electronically. So in Hudson, Southern New Hampshire Medical Center, we have a pilot agreement with them. It is identified, you know who the owner is, and we also know the amount of money that is brought in under that pilot. That's identified on the MS4 as well. That is the extent of my testimony.
Thank you. So based on what you said, are you implying that in Hudson, you don't know what properties are charities and or nonprofits, I'm sorry, and not being taxed?
Thank you for the question. Yes, we know exactly which properties are. The Board of Selectmen act on those every year, but there is no listing of that is required beyond you have an assessment card and you might have an exempt land use code, and we can put it, you know, in our annual report, but that's not obligatory. That's not a requirement. And that's just one community. So we absolutely do know the properties because we act on them each year.
Okay, so each town presumably then knows what the nonprofits are, but at a state level, we don't have that information.
I would agree with that as far as the real estate owned by these statutorily exempt organizations, which do have to meet a test. There is a 4-part test for charitable exemptions set out by the New Hampshire Supreme Court and Elder Trust versus Town of Epsom.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Eric Strout. I think it's, I can't read the last name. Shaw? Shaw, okay.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for taking my testimony. My name is Eric Shaw. I'm a selectman in the town of New Hampton. I'm here to testify in support of this bill. While it may appear to create a number of issues and address a relatively narrow issue for our taxpayers in our town, it's a very real issue and has substantial consequences. If this legislation passed, it would provide at least a modicum of relief to reduce a significant and growing property tax inequity in our town. One of the largest property owners in the town of New Hampton is the New Hampton School, which is a private educational institution that's a valued member of our community and has been for closing on 200 years. They have assessed, they're one of the biggest property owners. Their assessed value is in excess of $40 million. That's roughly 8% of our town's total assessed property value. They get an exemption under the law of roughly 82%. There's a split between some of the uses for some of their property and not, but they pay about 18% of what they would pay if they had to pay on their total assessed value. So that all boils down to the town receiving from the school roughly $40,000 a year which is about just under 1% of our town revenue or our town budget. In return, we provide municipal services, as you all know, for a campus population that exceeds 430 people between students and faculty. This is between 15 and 20% of the population of the town that pays 1% of our town budget. At the same time, they're also, in the last 5, 10, 15 years, have been buying up properties in our local village district from private landowners or homeowners. And that has also exacerbated the problem over that time period. And it's shifted more than 80,000 per year from our tax rolls. And that burden just gets shifted to other taxpayers. The other anomaly that we have, which wouldn't be addressed by this bill, but you should be aware of, is that the local school district assesses our town per student that goes to the local public school district, SAU4. And they charge us $24,000 per student. The New Hampton school faculty who live in tax-exempt housing have 12 children that go to that school district. That means that our taxpayers pay over $270,000 a year for the children of faculty at the New Hampton school to go to the local school district. Taken together, this impact on our town is over $400,000 per year on our taxpayers. It's roughly 10% of the town portion of the tax rate. And it falls hardest on what we've got is an aging population in our town and an increasing number of people on fixed incomes. Just for context, the New Hampton school, which benefits from these tax exemptions, tuition for one student for 1 year is $75,000 a year. The school has an endowment exceeding $40 million. They have annual revenues of $30 million. And they have an annual operating margin, which is essentially the same thing as saying profit, of over $3.5 million. So their annual profit is very close to our entire town budget. We have been in a discussion with them for the entire time I've been on the board, the select board, and that's 6 years. That discussion had been going on before I was on the board. They have steadfastly refused to enter into a pilot with our town to ameliorate the cost of the municipal services that we provide. I want to be clear, they're a valued member of our community. It's an essential portion of our town, but this is a growing inequity in the assessment of this property tax that needs to be fixed somehow. This bill would go some way to solving the problem, but if this bill doesn't come through, I'll be back before you trying to find another way to solve this problem. So thank you for your time and consideration. I'm happy to take whatever questions you might have.
Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Oh, what's that? Oh, too close, I couldn't see that. Representative Olm.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Shaw, for your testimony and for the situation of the large tax-exempt school in your district. I'm kind of curious about the pilot situation. My initial thoughts were you should have pretty good leverage negotiating a pilot, but apparently you do not. Can you describe some of the problems you have and what relief you need from the state? Is this the best example to this bill to give you relief to negotiate a pilot, or is there something else that would be appropriate?
Well, as I think about the leverage position passing this bill would put us in, instead of coming from a position of, hey, would you please give us some more money to ameliorate these costs? We would start from a position that says, hey, look, the law is now we get to tax you for our town rate. Now, we love you. You provide some benefits. They run a library that they let town people use. And there are a whole host of other things the school does for our town. But that leverage position changes materially. And so therefore, I think there would be a very quick pilot agreement between the town and the school. Right now, the board of the school has chosen to take the position, hey, we don't have to do it by law, so we're not going to do it. Which, I mean, you may take your own view on that position, but the only leverage we have is to make their life more difficult on the other municipal services that we're providing, and to date, we haven't been willing to do that.
Representative Almy.
Thank you. Would you believe that Lebanon on passed a PILT for $1 million for the tertiary hospital of northern New England and 11 years later, having run out of that one-time PILT, we sued the hospital for an interior group of doctors that were getting the profit, if any. Never managed to find out who did it, but it took 4 years of negotiating before we got a proper, not one-time PILT. And during that period, we lost quite a few citizens because they stopped paying the property tax and stuck it into a what do you call those things? A fund. Escrow, thank you. And so our property taxes went up by quite a bit. That's what, at least at that time, it took to get a PILT done.
Thank you for that, Representative Omi. I'm sure if I can find any leverage to try to reduce the tax rates on the townspeople in my town, I would do that. And this has been a sort of personal crusade of mine to try to fix this inequity. So I'd appreciate any help you can give us on this bill or any other.
Very good. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Henry Fayot. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Henry Vayu, and I'm here on behalf of the New Hampshire Alliance of YMCAs. I can also take my badge off today because I also volunteer as a board member of the Granite YMCA, which is one of the YMCAs in New Hampshire. We have locations in Manchester, Goffstown, Londonderry, the Seacoast, the Concord YMCA. And this bill would impact us. Our facility in downtown Manchester has a value over $1 million. As a board member of the Y, we are all expected to make a contribution and do fundraising. The Granite Y raises about $1.6 million. That's what we raised last year. And those funds go to support people in the community that can't afford the programs that we provide. So kids that want to go to summer camp, they can't afford it. That comes out of the $1.6 million that we raise. Parents and families that need childcare, and the scholarship from the state, if that doesn't fully enable them to, the money that we raise helps those families too. Elderly that want to do wellness programs and can't afford it, that helps also. So if this bill were to pass, the bottom line is that we would just essentially be able to provide less for those that can't. We accept all that come in our door and provide the services, and it would just mean that we'd be able to provide less and would make it much more difficult for us. So for that reason, we oppose the bill.
Thank you. Questions? Seeing, yes, Representative Olm.
Yeah, thanks you. I believe the YMCA is a charitable organization, not just a nonprofit. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, that prompted two more.
It's nonprofit.
It's charitable nonprofit
Right.
organization.
I want to make, I thought I heard you say it's charitable, not
Let
nonprofit.
let me clarify, I just want to go back to my previous comments.
The charitable nonprofit
That
organization.
there are a large group of nonprofits and a smaller subset of charitable organizations that are nonprofits. And I wanted to clarify that the YMCA is not just a broad-based nonprofit, but a specific subset of that, a charitable nonprofit.
Okay. Representative Elmy?
Yes, I think the YMCA is an example of the places that go beyond the borders of one town and provide a lot of services to people outside that. So I think that that's also a problem that has to be dealt with in somehow.
Okay. Representative Malloy?
Yes, in full disclosure here, I just recently left the Granite Y board that Mr. Vio sits on. I'm a member of the advisory committee of the Seacoast YMCA. And that Seacoast YMCA has activities in Kittery, Maine. So we cross state borders, to give an example. And I just thought I'd point that out in order to complicate this, and I may not even be able to vote on this bill in terms of, so I just want to make that clear.
Okay. Thank you for your testimony. Kathleen Reardon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman, and the members of the committee for hearing my testimony. For the record, my name is Kathleen Reardon. I am the CEO of the New Hampshire Center for Nonprofits, which is a statewide nonprofit association dedicating to strengthening and giving voice to our nonprofit sector. We have more than 800 members representing the diverse variety of nonprofits that we rely upon all across our state. I'm here to express our extreme concerns about this bill, which would pose really significant threats to our entire communities. Our communities rely upon nonprofits to deliver essential services such as childcare, affordable housing, healthcare, care for the elders, and so much more. Nonprofits provide these services in a cost-effective and efficient manner, oftentimes saving public dollars. I'd also like to point out there are many nonprofits, charitable nonprofits, that actually foster economic vitality in your communities. Think about all of the theaters and performing arts centers, museums, and cultural sites that bring visitors to your communities, that spend money in your businesses and create more economic vitality as well. The tax exemption process in New Hampshire for charitable nonprofits who use their properties for mission-related services is a policy that works. It is a partnership between state government and local government and nonprofits to provide really critical services. Every dollar that would be diverted through taxes will reduce the capacity of nonprofits to deliver really essential services. And at a time now when many nonprofits are seeing more demand for their services, this is a change that would be very detrimental. I will just add that nonprofits recognize that municipalities in our state have some challenges with managing budgets. Nonprofits recognize this. We manage it all the time and operate on very thin margins. So balancing the budgets by taxing nonprofits is not a good way to go and would risk essential services that our neighbors and communities rely upon. I urge you to vote this inexpedient to legislate, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Representative Ohm.
Yeah, I have to ask you my common question about charitable activities versus nonprofits. I'm not clear that you represent both types of organizations. Can you clarify what you represent?
Yes, yes, we do represent all nonprofit organizations across the state. As I mentioned, we have 800 members. The majority of our members and the majority of nonprofits in the state are charitable 50c3. So it's about, the last time I looked, there was about 70% of the nonprofits who register with the state are 501c3s. And it gets a little wonky because charitable or religious organizations can be considered charitable, but they don't have the same reporting requirements.
Representative Spar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Listening to Mr. Shaw's, situation with the town there, I mean, it's a real problem. And he's really struggling with trying to figure out how to make that a fair situation. It's a large nonprofit. It's very large. A lot of people, a lot of land. What would you do if you were in his shoes?
I'm not really sure that I can answer that question. I would say that there is in statute the ability to enter into voluntary pilot agreements, and many of those large organizations do that. I'm not sure the strategies that he's used in his town for that.
Just a quick follow-up. He expressed that that avenue hasn't worked. So he's in a bind because it's definitely burdening the taxpayers. And the school does provide a lot of benefits, he said, but it's definitely an inequity, as he said. Do you have any other thoughts?
My other thoughts are that the charitable nonprofits provide significant public benefit, and that's part of why the property tax exemption is earned by nonprofits participating, charitable nonprofits gaining that.
Representative Malloy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Reardon, for taking my question. And I apologize, this should have been asked of Mr. Viel, but would you believe that if a property tax in Portsmouth was levied on the Seacoast YMCA, that it would go into deficit and it would not be able to recover from that?
Yeah, I believe that many nonprofits, such as the Y in the Seacoast, would be unable to absorb the cost of those taxes within their current structures. I mean, the financial sustainability of many nonprofits is sort of built on this long-standing policy that our properties that are used for charitable missions are exempt. And that would be a huge hole for the Y and many other nonprofits to fill.
Thank you. Representative Elberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are trying to distinguish between nonprofits and charities. And sort of a general definition might be charities provide services that support the community, and nonprofits, other nonprofits may not. So I'd like to go back to Mr. Shaw's comment about his school. When you look at the impact on that locality of New Hampton, how do we have the community survive? And should we be looking at approaching charities and nonprofits differently? Do you have any sense of how your members might feel about that?
So one thing I would say, I would suspect that the New Hampton School is a charitable nonprofit. I don't know that. I'm not an expert in their situation. So the question about treating other kinds of nonprofits differently than charitable nonprofits, I think is sort of moot on this. The test and the process that is already in place in case law and in our statute there's a pretty rigorous test about the organizations, and the fact that he mentioned that they do provide some taxes. I mean, educational institutions oftentimes do pay for parts of their services that are deemed not related to their charitable purpose.
Okay, seeing no more questions, thank you for your testimony. Next, I have Tom Blonsky. Push the red button.
Is that better? Good
Yeah.
afternoon, committee members. My name is Tom Blonsky. I'm the president and CEO of Catholic Charities New Hampshire. I am here today to testify in opposition of House Bill 1293. This draconian tax bill will directly impact about 13 to 14 of our facilities and properties across the state. Just to give you a little bit of background on Catholic Charities, we're a large statewide human services organization of about 1,200 staff, serving approximately 1 in 12 individuals throughout the state every year. We own and operate 7 rehabilitation centers and nursing homes, the New Hampshire Food Bank, St. Charles Home in Rochester, St. Charles School, 2 transitional living programs, multiple senior support programs throughout the state, 8 district offices that provide various levels of case management support services, financial literacy training, life plan development, emergency financial assistance, and counseling and mental health services. Within the past year, we've also added to our portfolio Healthcare for the Homeless, which is an FQHC primary care practice in Manchester, and the Poisson Dental Clinic, which is also a program that is serving the underinsured and the Medicaid populations. This past weekend, we'll also be accepting our first residents and new applicants in phase 1 of our workforce and senior affordable housing development program in Peterborough. Last year, Catholic Charities New Hampshire contributed $24.2 million in free or reduced cost services to our underserved residents across the state. This past year, our NORBITA, or our net operating revenue before interest and depreciation for fiscal year 2025, was negative $175,000. In light of the contribution our organization makes to strengthening the social fabric of our state and serving our most vulnerable citizens every day, the thought of an additional unnecessary expense in the form of a tax assessment would devastate us and sink us further into a financial abyss. If this assessment was to move forward, it would require us to really potentially make a devastating choice as to whether or not we would possibly need to sell one of our 5-star nursing facilities, or maybe one of our most well-known and substantive programs like Liberty House or New Generation. New Hampshire nonprofits are exempt from taxation in part because they provide benefits and charitable assistance which the government itself might otherwise have to provide. The profound impacts nonprofits have in our state are immeasurable. We work effectively and efficiently and can demonstrate transformative impacts. The New Hampshire Food Bank, for example, back in October, kept SNAP beneficiaries whole after our government rescinded their benefits. In the span of just 1 week, in a very, very short time frame, we're talking just a matter of days, we were able to cull together and distribute close to 350,000 additional pounds of food out of the 20 million we distributed this year, of life-saving food to SNAP beneficiaries during that week. New Hampshire nonprofits are nimble, they're responsive, and vital to the health of our state. We operate lean and mean with extremely tight margins. The implementation of House Bill 1293 would create a tremendous hardship and potentially sink some of our nonprofits doing incredible mission-driven work who serve the least among us throughout the state. With the state and federal funding cuts and threats the nonprofit industry has had to deal with and face throughout the last year and continues to face to present, and assuming that they'll continue this year, we need partners to support and bolster our life-saving work, not ones who will push us to the curb with additional expenses. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Spar.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And your organization does tremendous work. And I guess what I'm trying to get my arms around is Mr. Shaw's, and I'm sure it's not just his town's dilemma, but there are a few other towns that are really disproportionately not, receiving adequate compensation for the amount of expenditure. You mentioned the St. Charles School, their tax assessment is $305,000 for that property. So they wouldn't even be taxed under this bill because there's a $1 million, minimum cap. Do you know how many properties that you have that would be subject to that based on the tax assessment?
About 13 to 14.
13 to 14 of them? Okay. Do you have any thoughts or suggestions that could, help solve this issue that he's tackling with?
I think you eat an elephant with one bite at a time and just be persistent about continuing to approach the issue and the morality of it. And hopefully you'll get the right board members at the right time who will understand the issue, the municipal issue, and to really focus on the common good and how we can each do our part.
Representative Malloy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have another full disclosure to make. I was on the board of New Generation when we turned it over to your organization because while it was a going concern, we felt that your service could be more supportive of that and deal with capital needs and so on and so forth. If this bill were to pass, do you have an estimate? And we have a $14 tax rate in Greenland on that property that's, I know, worth over $1 million. What would that do to operating a New Generation in Greenland? And it's not a homeless shelter; it is a shelter. I'll be very clear about that too.
So we receive some state funding for that program, but we operate at about a $600,000 to $700,000 deficit every year. So we are fundraising through foundations, through grants. We actually have a thrift store on the campus that does serve to address that deficit. So it would just continue to drive us further into the hole with that program and require us to reach out to additional donors to help to support us, perhaps.
Follow up.
Yep. Follow up.
So is Catholic Charities floating New Generation Inc. right now? Meaning it's making up its deficits?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking my question. Would you agree that this is sort of fishing in the wrong pond and that the state and municipalities might be better off by being pro-growth and recruiting more businesses to the state and getting the revenue that way instead of out of the pockets of our charities that are helping?
Love that idea.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your testimony.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Ben Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'll try to be brief. My name is Ben Bradley. I work for the New Hampshire Hospital Association and represent all 26 of the state's acute care hospitals, which include 22 nonprofit hospitals. In full disclosure, I'm also a board member of a local nonprofit in Dover, the Dover Children's Home. However, I'm not here to speak on their behalf. I'm here on behalf of our members at the Hospital Association. We join others representing nonprofits opposed to HB 1293. Proposals to enable new taxes on nonprofit hospitals are not new to this committee. In 2017, this committee considered HB 573 relative to the exemption from property taxation for charitable nonprofit hospitals. The committee recommended the bill inexpedient to legislate 22-0. This bill, HB 1293, would impose municipal property tax rate, as you've heard, on charitable organizations valued in excess of $1 million. I do want to make a little bit of a different point than others have made, which is that it appears some nonprofits would be taxed on their property if it was valued over $1 million, while others, even if providing similar services in the same municipality, would not have to pay the property tax under this proposal, simply because that value was less than $1 million. And even though you have a uniform amount of $1 million, it doesn't appear to be impacting the taxpayer in a uniform way. Additionally, we have concerns that if this bill were to pass, there's no evidence that the additional revenue would go towards community health needs or reduce the tax burden on other property taxpayers, but could only increase spending on municipal projects that do not address the health needs of the community as hospitals' contributions do. The new tax would simply divert nonprofit resources away from mission-driven needs into additional general municipality spending. With or without the $1 million threshold, we do not support charitable nonprofit organizations being subject to property taxes. Nonprofit hospitals are exempt, as you know, and in New Hampshire, nonprofit community hospitals provided almost $675 million in community benefits in 2023. That's the latest data we have. The attached 25 community benefits report recently published outlines these benefits in more detail. I won't go into that. We do work collaboratively with our communities to assess and address the needs of those communities. May enter into pilots, as Representative Almy has pointed out. A November 2025 analysis by EY, which is formerly Ernst & Young, shows that tax-exempt hospitals across the country delivered 3 times their federal and state tax exemption and benefits to their communities. We believe we're important community assets that provide significant economic benefit as well, but are concerned that this bill may unintentionally disrupt existing agreements between nonprofit hospitals and local municipalities. So for these reasons, we are opposed to the bill and ask the committee to move in expedient to legislate. I'm happy to answer your questions.
Representative Almy.
Thank you. Can you see any way to modify this bill in a way that would succeed at getting nonprofits that have on major expense, that create major expenses for the towns that they're in, to create a PILT?
I think,
which is, as you know, it has to be agreed to by both sides.
right, and I don't believe that that's the case for this bill. I don't have a suggestion for how to do that. I do think that that opportunity already exists, where a municipality can go to a nonprofit, as they have gone to our nonprofit hospitals, and said, you know, we have this need with our police station, or we have this need with our emergency services. We know you're experts in this space. Would you contribute to that? And many of them do. So I feel that rather than trying to amend the bill to accommodate that, I feel that the existing structure is already in place to do so.
Just
Follow up.
We've heard, I think, 2 cases of times when they could not, besides the one in Lebanon, which took 4 years, which cost, where the town was paying an extraordinary amount, actually, for the benefit of the place that they were in, and the nonprofit did not want to discuss it.
I would say I'm not an expert in PILT or pilot negotiations. I would leave that to those experts that are within the local nonprofits and municipalities.
Representative Opal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for taking my question. I think your testimony was you have 22, or you're representing 22 nonprofit, charitable nonprofit hospitals.
Yes.
Of those 22, can you tell us how many have entered into a pilot?
Several. I don't have an exact number.
Is that something you might provide this committee?
I don't think that's something we annually collect or look into routinely, so it would take some time, but I would be willing to look into it.
I think it would be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
2 to go. Mitch Grays.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nate Grays for the Business and Industry Association, the statewide Chamber of Commerce. We oppose this legislation. We do have among our membership nonprofits, including those qualifying for as charitable under the definition in RSA 72:23-L, which is, I think, some committee members may be interested in taking a look at. Just a few points I want to make. So for any threshold, whether that's $1 million or any other, you're going to see a disparate impact on organizations that have the same mission but different property valuations, and you're going to end up with a different tax treatment. So while I was sitting in back, I pulled the property tax cards for the Granite Y here in Concord. That property is valued slightly more than $4 million. Meanwhile, down the street, the main Boys and Girls Club is valued at slightly more than $2 million. So you could see how, kind of a local adoption of changing of that cap, where both of those organizations provide after-school programs. Both of them are clearly charitable organizations. You're going to have a different impact, and you're going to pick winners and losers among existing charities and potential future ones. The other thing I want to point out is this really does change the leverage for those payment in lieu of tax negotiations. If my job as an attorney, it would be to represent the municipality. If that was the case, if that's what I was hired to do, and I knew that the default was you pay whatever your assessed value is in taxes, or you can do a pilot, why would I ever accept a pilot that's less than what they would pay in property taxes anyway? Especially if I don't like if my select board has decided they don't like the organization, which does qualify under state law for the charitable exemption. So you have this situation where you have this perverse incentive that you're going to be allowing municipalities to pick winners and losers based on how they do this. It's possible, of course, that they're going to say, look, you have you do good things for our community. But one of the things I want to point out that I think several committee members have pointed out is you have these charities of regional impact. So for example, the Boys and Girls Club here in Concord runs a daycare, but we're an economic hub. Kids who go to that daycare don't just come from Concord, they come from the surrounding communities. So being able to choose who wins and who loses, maybe the Concord City Council supporting the larger community, maybe they don't. This sets it up for a conflict there between municipalities, which is problematic. And the last thing I want to mention is the reason for the charitable exemption in the first place is because these organizations provide services that are of societal value. Not paying taxes allows them to put that money towards that purpose rather than giving it to the local tax collecting governmental entity to do whatever they're going to do with it. I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you. Representative Schamberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking this question. To your understanding, do all nonprofits that are in New Hampshire apply for a property tax exemption with the local municipal assessor if they own property in a town? Do you know if
I don't believe they do.
I'm sorry.
I don't believe they do. It's possible they all do, but I wouldn't be the
Okay.
person who has that information.
Thank you.
Representative Opal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to ask you a difficult question, but it's come to my mind sitting here listening to the testimony of a variety of people. I'm frankly at a loss because I'm empathetic to both sides. Mr. Shaw's description of his situation seemingly is a counter to what you were suggesting in that they recognize in the town of New Hampton the value of the school, but the school doesn't appear to be recognizing the value of the town and its community, perhaps as it might. So I've gone back and forth, and I wonder if you would agree with me that perhaps what this bill and this testimony have demonstrated is that we rely too much on property taxes for revenue in this state.
Well, thank you for the question. I'm really not here to comment on how we fund services in the state. One thing I would like to point out, though, is that one of the things you may consider is our overall tax burden compared to other states and how much we rely on charitable organizations to provide services that would otherwise be provided by the government as compared to other states. That might be a useful comparison because I believe it's the case we have a lower overall tax burden, but we also have a much higher charitable engagement.
And yet at the same time, it's also true with that lower overall tax burden that the burden is significantly higher on people who can afford it the least. Would you not agree? Given the regressive nature of a property tax, which has nothing to do with your ability to pay.
Again, I'm not here to comment on how we fund the government. I'm just focused on this,
I know,
this
but
single bill.
you raised the question, and I think it's an important one. I think it's a good one, but you did raise the question.
Well, thank you for the question.
Okay, seeing no more questions. Oh, can we just ask you how to spell your first name?
Yes, sorry. It's NATCH. Last name is GREYES. And I apologize. I probably should have been a doctor with my handwriting. But I didn't have the grades to get into med school.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, last pink card I have here is Matt Leahy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, I'm Matt Leahy. I'm the Public Policy Director for the Society for the Protection of New Hampshire Forest. We also oppose the bill. I am handing out our written testimony. I won't read it, but I'll be happy to answer any questions on it. I would just make sort of one overarching point. You know, we certainly understand the financial stresses that are facing municipalities now. You know, our concern with the bill is that in attempting to correct one issue, and as you've heard from other speakers, you know, the bill may be, you know, inadvertently creating stresses in other sectors of our state. And, you know, we know these are complicated issues here, but, you know, nonprofits do make deep benefits to the communities they're located in and statewide. So again, for that reason, we oppose the bill. But I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Representative Ohm.
Yeah, thank you for coming before us.
Yeah.
You're certainly a nonprofit, but are you also a charitable organization?
We are a 501c3 nonprofit. I guess I would need to talk to my folks to see that definition of charitable, but we are a 501c3 nonprofit. That's how we list ourselves.
Yeah, because my initial reaction, you certainly are a 501c3, but it's not clear to me whether you qualify under the charitable section of that code. And perhaps you get back.
Yep.
Representative Malloy.
Let me, thank you for taking, Mr. Chairman, thank you for taking my question. Let's get at this charitable thing. If one makes a contribution to the New Hampshire Society for Protection of Forests, is that a tax deductible contribution?
It is tax deductible.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to testify on HB 1293? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing on HB 1293. Okay, that concludes our work for today. Because we were so efficient yesterday, we don't need to do work sessions and exec sessions. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, one of the things that we have been talking around a lot particularly with this bill, but at other times as well, is what, if any, is the distinction between a nonprofit and a charity? And can we get a ruling from somebody if there is one, and if so, what it is?
Sure.
In statute, but we should get.
Right. I mean,
Um,
I hate picking on them, but I know that the New Hampshire Police Bagpipe Band is a nonprofit. You know, I love bagpipe music. I will say that right off the top of my head, but the difference between the service that they provide and the service that the YMCA's and hospitals provide are quite distinct. So if we can get something on that, it would be great.
I don't think
Thank you.
Jen Four is here. I'll send an email to her.
Why don't we
first.
just choose, I mean, wouldn't you think it'd be the definition of a 501c in the IRS code?
We have that, but the question is, what's the subset for charitable? Everyone sees.
Yeah, I'm just saying,
I want to understand this little piece
yeah,
that's defined in statutes in terms of the.
I just looked up the publication. I just,
Okay. We meet Monday. The latest weather I looked at, it doesn't look like it's going to snow, but that could change. But right now, we're meeting Monday and Wednesday next week. And we'll have a similar format of public hearings, followed by work session and exec. Both. Okay, whatever works.
That gets rid of all of it.
I will say your testimony changed how the entire committee. No, it is 10% Yeah. I don't know if you guys are aware of Sandy. The Mulberg. But that's seemed like east and they do. From all around the country. 4 months. So how does that, how make sure everybody's benefiting the lady? I know. People library.